It's December 16th. We're here tonight to go over draft ed specs that were put together by Sean and Chris and Ian. And the purpose of the night is to go through these, I guess, page by page. What they are is they're basically a list of existing spaces for each school, and then a list of recommended spaces with comments. And so it's our job here tonight to go through these, make sure we understand them, the rationale behind them. And so what I suggest we do, Chris, is I just start at the top.
Sure.
And we'll go one by one. It would strike me that the areas where we are looking at recommendations of brand-new spaces might draw the most attention.
Sure.
So why don't you?
Yeah, so let me first apologize. I used a template, from 2011, so I didn't have to go back and create it, and it didn't come out. So when I had it on my computer, that did not show, so I'm sorry, it says 2011 up on top of there. That is an error on my part, as well as some of the formatting, so I can correct that for the next time or whenever this needs to go public. But if we go to the junior, senior high school, as I said before, we have a list out of every existing condition that's in the junior, senior high school. And if you see a gray line, it's something that we don't have right now. But part of the mission that was given to us is to not build the school that you have currently, but what would you build if you build a school that would last for the next 50 years? So there's spaces that are added in there based on our recommendations, but also recommendations from Banwell and also from the Joyce report of things that we were missing. The recommendation part is based on, so the class sizes, so when you look at the first line and you look at language arts, most of our rooms vary in size, the average being about 840. At the middle school level, the Department of Education makes a recommendation, and again, it's just a recommendation to the school boards that if you were to build new, your classroom size for middle school students would be no less than 900 square feet.
And even to renovate?
If you were to renovate, they would make a recommendation of 900 square feet for those classrooms. And that's for your general classrooms. So that's your language arts, that's your mathematics, that's your social studies. We added a world language class because we share a world language class right now at the high school, for the high school and the junior high. So we would have world language be its own separate classroom in a middle school wing, as that is introductory world language for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in our current curriculum. When you move down, we put in for 3 1,200 square foot science classrooms at the middle school level. Currently, you have 2 at 833 and 1 at 1,010 feet. And again, we'll make them all 1,200 because they're a combination classroom. They're a classroom with a lab attached to it, and that, again, that is the recommendation from the Department of Education.
Now, the Joyce report recommended science classrooms of 1,200 square feet. And is that a DOE standard?
It is, correct.
Is.
Yeah, any lab-type classes that you want to build classroom space and lab space makes a general recommendation of 1,200 square feet minimum.
Is there a way that we can sort of go through yours and then reference where the Joyce report, I recognize it's not as detailed, but it covers some of the same things, I'd like to at least be able to say, is there things new here that haven't been covered before? I mean, they may have been here before, but the Joyce report or the JAC report chose not to highlight them.
Sure.
I'm just trying to get where is it different, where is it the same? And then if there's priorities, and I don't know if there are, maybe that's a later time.
So, for instance, on page 20 of the Joyce report, we're talking now about science rooms. And see down at science labs, it says 3 needed space, 3 rooms for 1,200 square feet. That seems to line up with what is on the recommended part of the ed specs for science rooms, 3 rooms at 1,200. And what I didn't see on the Joyce report, but is on the draft ed specs, and there may be a good reason for it, is the next one down was the 200 square feet for a prep room.
Correct. So that's a prep room that's shared by all 3 classrooms where teachers could go prep for lab experience that they're doing with the kids. It can be a small storage area, but it's significant as science always has more equipment and more needs when you're putting them together.
Are we starting with middle school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Great. right here, Russ.
I see science classroom. Above that, you have others, and those are the standard 900.
Go down, there's a prep room under the 1,200. It says 200, one prep room.
Science classroom, science lab/classroom, and then prep room.
Yep.
There's a gray line to the left of it, gray area. Is that something we don't have now?
You
Okay.
got it?
I think I'm looking at the same thing. So what we're saying in the general classrooms, if I'm reading this correctly, is for the first three, we have 9. They're slightly undersized from the 900 standard. And then there's an addition of 1 classroom for world language.
Correct.
And that's what your gray lines are signifying.
Gray line signifying we do not have that currently in our building.
Chris, can I just, it's sort of an afterthought, but we're looking at existing conditions and then recommendations. And it would be nice for like the middle school, for the general classrooms to have a total number. And then for the recommendations, a total number. Because, I mean, you can look at, I did a quick calculations for the existing, it's like 7,500. And then for recommendations, like 9,000, but the delta is 1,600. And what I'm saying, I'm trying to compare, you have some classrooms like the 850 square feet, and the recommendation is 1,200.
Yep.
And when we get down to comparing, let's say, a renovation versus a new build, I think those numbers would be very helpful. Because at the end, if you added all these up, you're gonna get what we have now.
Correct?
And then you're gonna have, for the ed specs, additional
Correct.
that we need, but it'd be great to see that delta between
Yeah,
them.
and so how that works is that additional is then what the architect takes and builds the space off that additional needs.
1,465 square feet on those first 4.
Right,
Over and above what we have.
Right.
1,465 square feet needed, according to this.
right.
The elementary version has those totals at the top, the middle and high school.
Yeah.
But I thought also Ingrid said you work around, if you're not building new, and be able to say, it's not that you shortchange, but you use the space you have the most effectively.
Correct.
So something may not
Ye-
come out on average, or it may be slightly less, or that kind of thing. Am I listening correctly?
That's right.
Hear
I
that?
think, Dan, that was your question last time. You asked, we got a bunch of spaces that are just bumping near the
Right.
standard. I mean, do we have to change those? And Ingrid said that, you can get certain exemptions for some, but she seemed to suggest that you gotta be like 90% compliant on all those.
Yeah.
One thing I've already done.
I'm not just saying,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, we're sort of rehashing, but like the 840,
Yep.
you can take the 840, the 823, and you can combine those. So I just like at the end is knowing what the difference is on what we have and what we
Existing versus-
need.
I got you.
And I
Okay.
think that'd be a
Well,
great delta.
Yep.
And to get a feel, if I look at the middle school and you're saying 90% there, it seems that, and I don't know the layout and whether you could add more space, but the 840 to the 2 at 850 are 95% of the space, right?
Where do you get 850? Are
I
we
see room
talking?
area of 840 and then
Okay.
a room area of 900. So I would
Yep.
look at those three saying, yeah, I know there's extra space that you'd like to have, but it seems those are close enough in the 90 to 95% range where you may say that's sufficient space, that's close enough to 900.
I see where you're going, Russ. I got you. And I don't, and we'll have to
'Cause I
follow.
don't think it's just the square footage
Yeah.
thing, it's where the square footage is, the school, what's the rental plan.
You looked at it a little differently than I did. I looked at it as Ingrid talking about the percentage of rooms in your building that need to meet the code versus the percentage area of each room. And I don't know which way the DOE looks at it, if you're,
That's a good point.
you know what I'm saying? Isn't that what you're trying to say, is that if you're at 840 and.
I'm in an area, I'm in a place I don't know facts.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
listening to what people say. And so
I
if
think
I'm
it's a
going
good
through
question.
this,
Yeah.
that if I see a gray space, it suggests, well, at least I see them on both sides, so I'm somewhat confused. But if I'm saying, gee, we don't have in the middle school a world language, and we need a world language, and it's a 900 foot, to me, that's an add. going through the other spaces where we seem to have the same amount of rooms, but not necessarily the best space.
Right.
That seems to me to be, someone else has to, whether it's the architect and saying, can you add a little bit here? Do you have to, the question we're asking now. I'd sort of look at that and say, it seems to me on the surface, without knowledge, that not much has to be done in the first 9 classrooms, because they're pretty close to 900 feet, unless something else changes that. Now, that may be a lousy view, or it may be a good view, and that's all I'm trying to do, is ask the question, is that a reasonable view to say, those seem to be within about 90% of the space? It seems to me, regardless of other reno things that would change where the location of that is or how you can use it, that those 9 classrooms are pretty close to what would be required. And in that section, certainly one additional space, but the other 480 is a nice pipe dream, and you take that into account if you're redoing the area, but you're not having to break it up. I'm just trying to ask for a way to process.
I think,
When Ingrid talked about, I think that kind of detail is important if there was no discussion of renovation, or, if we were just working with the exact space that we have. But I think that there's an opportunity to meet Department of Education requirements here. And I actually look at the opposite, rather than saying, well, it's about 94% compliant, just saying, well, we just need to go 6% more, and we're exactly where we need to be, right? So, and she had talked about, when I said, what does renovate mean? She had said, gut most of those walls. She had said, we're reconfiguring, it wouldn't just be going and, slapping new paint on, but completely refiguring.
And if we don't
walls
know
and
the answer,
replacing-
I'm fine to hold it up.
it's one of those unknowns that I think we got to pin down, and so the way I'm looking at it, the broader question to me that I haven't had answered yet, and I do have a call into Amy, I think it's Clark at the DOE. She's going to come visit us in January with Ingrid and discuss what the state standards are and how they get to those. So the legal question I have is that, why do we need to follow them? Well, I presume they're based on best practices, educationally, but there's no state aid right now, and so is it like, if we're close, as Russ, like, say, we've got a room here that's 848 feet, is it, and it's likely sufficient, for the purpose, do we need to add another 50 square feet on that, just to comply with a rule? Or, so the other thing is when state aid comes back, we hope, we gotta understand what we would need to, be compliant with in order to maybe to apply for retroactive state aid, if that were part of a new statute. But Russ raises an interesting question, because I was thinking of percentage in terms of the total number of rooms compliant versus looking at each room, comparing it to the total square foot.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Here's my concern. My concern is to have a professional give us a thought. And it seems to me, we've heard some general constraint or opportunity things that end up saying, gee, if it's within 90 or 95%, you may not have to change that room. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that's true. If there's nothing else that says, I'm going to redo this whole section of the building from scratch, so let's build it a different way. If you said, gee, I don't have to touch those 3 rooms, they're okay, hypothetically. But you're adding 50, 70, 30 feet here, 80 feet there. When you end up with the total, you may end up with 10,000 square feet across an entire building that really doesn't have to be expanded in that space, maybe only 2,000 or 3,000 feet for the new classrooms or these things here. And I'm not saying one's right or wrong, and one's going to cost more than the other. I'd just like to be able to say to people and ourselves, hey, there seems to be 6,000 feet that, or Ingrid really to say for us, there seems to be 6,000 feet you don't need if you just technically apply the 900 square feet, because we're close enough in 70% of the classrooms that we're not going to make a significant.
That.
Here's the 30 that we need to be able to support that kind of stuff.
Chris, do you know when the Department of Education does compliance, are they looking at, like, what level of analysis are they looking? Are they looking at total percentage of classrooms in compliance, or are they looking at specifics?
The way that they do their formulas is the purpose of the room based on square footage per student population. So it's different at the elementary school. Kindergarten needs 1,000 square feet because of materials and teaching space. So that's how they put it in there, and it's all based on student safety. So that number is to be a significant amount of square footage for student safety. So they give you a number, and it's, I don't have that with me, but I can bring that next meeting, because I have it. I don't have it in this booklet. It gives you every classroom space and why they have it listed it that way.
So it's based on per specific room.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's why like a classroom that can be any content is 900, but a science lab is 1,200 because of the purpose of labs there.
And this is, especially for renovation, an incredibly important issue. Just look at your first 3 rows here. If you had to become compliant, you'd have to move a wall here, move one here, and then you'd eventually bump out and you'd run out of space. So very important that you sort of know.
Well, and if we
Yeah.
don't know for tonight,
Yeah.
then going through and saying, gee, these seem to be close, we'll have to make. The impression I got from Ingrid, at least in a renovation, forget the fact that you build new without state support. That seems to be an issue. You have to follow the state's rules if they're not having any money in the game, okay? Which Ingrid has also sort of raised up as an option. But it seems any renovation is a negotiation of reasonable people sitting down and saying, what's the best use of this space? And so I would tend to think if we're trying to say, let's get the most out of a renovation, but let's also be frugal, somewhere in there, 50, 60, who knows, 20, I don't know what the number is, but a certain portion of the building may have to have very little done to it, and a certain portion of the building may have to change completely because you're adding classrooms. And if Ingrid's the only one to say that, then let's not waste any more time tonight in trying to figure out a formula that none of us exactly know. I just say, let's say these seem to be close, this seems to be a clear add, and this one seems to double the space required in this particular room, just so I walk away personally with how much is one of these and how much is another one and how much has to be done.
I've got it noted. I'll follow up with Ingrid. Yep. All right.
So if we go.
Down to the prep room, I think.
Yeah, so then we went to common lockers areas, three different wings, 900 square feet. And the reason you would do this is if you see that 900, you can store your lockers in there. It's usually at the end of a hallway. It becomes a gathering space, but if you ever needed to, that 900 square foot space could become a classroom if you ever had a growth area. So you take the lockers out and you have a built-in classroom already without having to do any work. That would be typical of most middle schools, that you would have a locker wing where kids could go and oftentimes do team time or a larger gathering space. There's 3 team rooms, teacher team rooms that are on team. We do not currently have those spaces. Then you have special
And,
education.
And so, maybe what we ought to do too is, if this is something that was recommended by the Joyce report, just kind of point that out as we go along. If not, indicate, why the additional space, just so we all understand it.
And I'm sorry if you guys are still ahead of me. I'm just trying to understand the opposite here, where I clearly understand world languages, we need an extra room. Science classroom, it says we have 2, and then it's gray next to it. Are you saying we don't need any, or we need the 2 and we're not
If you go to
making
science
any
classrooms, we have 2 at 833 square feet.
changes? Right?
We have 1 at 1,010. So I am saying that we need 3 at 1,200. I'm saying we don't need any at 833. We don't need any at 1,010. We need 3 at 1,200.
Because all of them should be for science lab
Should be
classroom
1,200,
spec.
correct.
I got you, okay.
So Mike, I heard yours. I think that's going to be a lot of bouncing around. So I think Sean and I can definitely go back and take and say, from these numbers or questions what was in the Joyce report or not, if we try to go through line by line and say what was in the Joyce report or what wasn't, a lot of the work that Ann, Sean, and I did come from the Joyce report and came from
Okay.
previous reports, we'd be here all night. So I think we can present the ed specs as we would as if we're looking to do a renovation or new building, because this is what an ed spec does. That's the purpose of it. It looks at your existing space and the recommendations moving forward. But I think it's gonna be very tough if we wanna go back and forth and say, where was this highlighted, because we can't do that right now.
Okay.
Chris, maybe rather than drilling down to the very specifics of every, and I agree with you, probably too much for the time that we have tonight, but maybe you could talk a little bit about your decision-making criteria that the three of you use to
Exactly.
build, either pull from the Joyce
Sure.
report or to pull other places. I mean, so if you could kind of just give us your rationale as to why these things show up here and maybe not in the Joyce report, or in
Right.
addition to the Joyce report.
Well, I would
maybe
tell you the
there.
numbers that are used here are consistent with the Joyce report and
Okay.
also consistent with Ingrid. We actually shrunk down a couple sizes from Ingrid because we went to the minimum standard where Ingrid had a little bit bigger space. So none of our numbers are inflated. So I would tell you that right from the get-go, is that we followed the Joyce report and Benwell's recommendation on classroom size to the minimum standard. There's nothing that's above and beyond that.
So, but conceptually, though, Banwell pulled from the staff and teacher interviews and the
Correct.
Joyce report. So, in a sense, you know, how do I describe this? We're chasing our tail a little bit, because, you know, what is the accurate source, I think, is what we need to know. I mean, the staff may say one thing, you know, but as administrators, I mean, I think the notion is to bring it down to a realistic,
Correct.
you know, point of view. And so if Ingrid is, you know, pulling just, you know, from their interviews, I mean, they may not match up. I mean, you guys may have different ideas.
Well, that's highlighted mostly in music. You know, music asked for 7 different types of conduction rooms.
Okay, and
We didn't do that.
And we'll get there.
Right.
And as we're talking generally, and I appreciate that, because maybe it'll make the rest of this go faster. I recognize Ingrid said we needed science rooms before.
Mhm.
And so if you're saying, for the sake of argument, that yes, we need 3, and they need to be 1,200 in order to be able to be the right size, and we have 3 today, if you're building 3 new rooms, that science wing or something like that, then I'm looking at this, it's great, okay, now I understand where the 3 science rooms are. Now I have 3 other classrooms that may fulfill the need for someone else's expansion,
Right.
okay? I don't look at this as I'm gonna add 253 feet to this room and 17 feet to that room.
That is correct.
So if this is an add of space, then I'm looking at those 3 classrooms as fulfilling some other need. And those are the things I'm trying to compare here. If that's not a good time to do that,
No,
then let's just go over
You're
the
absolutely
specs.
right in what will happen, and I guess for me, being a visual learner, when you see this really come out is when Ingrid will do a recommendation of what we put for class sizes. She'll put your existing classrooms, then she'll color code it with what your renovation will be. So this 1,000-square-foot classroom that we had in there, that we need a new science lab, has now become repurposed for some other reason, or two other reasons. And that comes out when she draws it up. So you can say, okay, we added 1,200 square feet, but we took that 1,000 and repurposed it for something else.
Right.
That's absolutely correct.
Well, and she, actually, in one of the versions that she's already presented to us, she had a whole science wing that was a brand-new addition,
Correct.
if we were talking about renovations. And yeah, those other classrooms had been repurposed, so that's the way she was
So,
being frugal with space.
so you can't just take the left column, add it up, take the right column and add it up. You know? And take the difference, because it's,
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking the questions.
Well, in a way, you will get a little bit, because you'll get the added-on spaces in there. It does happen, we did do it that way in the elementary school, so you'll see a bonus of 20,000 square feet. Well, what does that mean? That means X number of classrooms that we build into there.
Well, yeah, if the best way to go through this is to understand block by block, is this, gee, we have sufficient classrooms, we just may have some space problem, to be determined whether that's good or bad? No, we have serious deficiencies, we need more space for
Right.
this, okay? And then there may be ones that are confusing, which just says, this seems to be on the cusp, you may need something major, or it may be sufficient. I'm fine in getting that general idea, but if it's gonna be up to Ingrid to say, before everybody says you can't add this up, and that's the concern I have. You just start adding these things up, and I haven't.
I
You
can
may
tell
end
you
up
what
with-
it is.
Okay.
This first page, 22,535 feet is needed over and above what we have.
And when you say needed, that's the addition of
This
the.
is just the math.
Right. Ingrid may come back and say, we can get by with 17,000 in this configuration doing this. Someone else may say, well, what are the priorities? Gee, that's doing everything. If we didn't do everything and we only wanted to do 80 or 90% of this, okay. So I can see all those discussions happening, and that's why I get frightened when you just simply say, let's add up a number. I don't know whether this comes to 300,000 square foot building by the end of it because of all the pieces that everybody
But
wants.
it's my understanding that this, I mean, if we were just to add these, you have already culled the wheat from the chaff, as it were, and said these things, the things that were optional, that were ornamental, or that you felt that were kind of the dream space of a music teacher or something like that. That's, you guys as a committee, kind of as a subcommittee, have already taken
Correct.
some of those.
We've weeded
Diff-
most of those
yeah.
out, yeah.
So this is pretty bare bones.
Yeah, well, these recommendations are what you'd recommend for a building to be able to last for the next 50 years if it was renovated. And if it was built from scratch, you don't even look at that left column, this is what you would recommend for a brand-new building, on
And-
minimum standards.
And you're also saying you feel Ingrid would be in the same place?
Correct.
Okay.
And if you look at the report she gave us based on that, it's very similar. You know, she built it out the same way. What Ingrid will do is she'll give you that 22,000 square feet over a renovation, then it's the job of us to come back and say, all right, that's $2 million over the budget that we were planning on, presenting. How do we cut $2 million out of that?
And so I'm just trying to get that sense of comparison. So if you're saying this comes out pretty similar to Ingrid, that's why I was saying, can you compare this to what Ingrid had or to what this is? So we know where the major difference is.
Right.
Thank you.
So Mike, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
easier just to go line by line if people have questions or
Well, maybe-
comparisons or.
I'm more interested in understanding for like new spaces, why,
Sure.
what the purpose is. You don't have to go on and on about it, but just, so we just understand. So, like, say the teacher team rooms.
Yep,
What
okay.
would those be used for? We don't have them now, right?
We do not.
Okay.
So that would be planning for teachers at the middle school. They have to use a classroom right now when they have their common planning time to plan out their curriculum or anything that they do on team. That 400 square foot space becomes a dedicated space where they're not interrupted. It's a private space. You put a phone in there that's private that they can make phone calls to parents. So it becomes a team space. And that's really the middle school philosophy of having team rooms to go and work on curriculum.
So it calls out 200 to 300 square feet, and then in the room area column, it says 400 square feet. So what does the 200 to 300 square feet mean in the notes?
Yeah, that's a edit that should have been taken out. We went with 400. There's recommendations in there of smaller team rooms. We went with 400.
Okay?
Can I ask why, Chris?
We looked at a bigger space. When you have 5 individuals in a room, and then if you're going to be putting your curriculum in your computers, and, it could be some type of storage, we went with a little bit bigger. And again, that's a spot where you can say, nope, we want to save 100 square feet. We think a team room is important, but we want to save area. But we built with 400, and that's based on other schools we visited or worked in. With that, that's the reason that number came up.
Are these dedicated rooms? So let's say we build 3 rooms and we call them teacher team rooms. They're probably not going to be used 100% of the time, but
No,
they're
they would
being
not.
built, and maybe they are, I don't know. But, okay, so, like I was in an office building and I said, we have to have meeting rooms, so let's put in 8 conference rooms, and those conference rooms may be 70 or 80% utilized on one day and 30% on another day, and the different staffs are coming in and out and using those. That's a pretty reasonable, expectation of using common space and using scheduling.
Right.
So how do I look at 3 team rooms, saying, well, we may need 3, on given times, but 80% of the time, they're not gonna be used for anything else other than empty,
Sure.
would say to me, well, gee, why can't we combine that with some other needs and use some scheduling to be able to, unless they're specially outfitted rooms, to say that may fulfill 3 of the needs here. Where if I see later on we need 3 separate rooms, am I supposed to say it's now 6 rooms, or do we combine that with this? That's the understanding I'm looking for
Sure.
eventually, so. But right now, it would say 3 rooms and dedicated.
Correct. 1 for each grade level team, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Okay, written down on the special ed resource room.
Yeah, so we have 3 special ed case managers. Right now, they're in combined areas. So going from the 2 classrooms of 825 square feet to 3 classrooms of 450, so that's an area we actually shrunk, because that's a dedicated space, and again, that's a pull-out type of situation where a kid might need individual or, 2 to 3 kids per support based on that individual teacher.
And so I presume we're finding that 2 rooms isn't enough. You need 3.
You need 1 for each grade level. Right now, we're sharing classrooms. And when you're on team 3 out of 4 classes, you're rotating it, that classroom is maximized all 4 periods a day.
Mhm. Okay.
There's no technology storage and no book storage at the middle school level at all.
And so what does that result in, Chris?
It means keeping your computer labs in a teacher's room, although it's locked up, but it's locked up in a teacher's room rather than a dedicated closet. And as you continue to push towards one-to-one, there's more and more mobile labs that are, it's just locked up in a teacher's room. Same with books, classroom space is eaten up by storage for books and materials.
And this would be 1 for the entire
Correct.
junior high.
Chris, it seems like storage is a big problem.
Yep.
And in Joyce's report, he mentioned purging. And I went some other reports that he's done, and he's, same thing.
Yep.
Purge, purge, purge.
Sure.
Do you have a purge policy?
No, there's nothing that's set there. I would tell you, every time we've had a fire and life safety report, purging has happened drastically. But I would tell you, the nature of a teacher is to hold on to materials, probably well past their prime, but there is no policy on purging.
Because we went to one school, and their principal makes them purge.
Oh, she was a.
She's adamant about purging.
Didn't,
know.
yeah, Dr. Joyce said in there pretty forcefully, oh, no, he said it during the meeting when he came and talked to us, that was one of his observations, is that, and he said, something we ought to look at.
I'm not saying it's gonna solve your problems. but-
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
I would tell you that I would love to see it. It's one of those things that, and just I'd leave it at that. I would love to see it.
Well, that's why you're an assistant principal.
I'm glad he heard that.
Well, I will say, as a teacher myself, I am, I have the books that I used when I was in graduate school and my undergraduate. I feel like my entire knowledge base doesn't have to be up here as long as it's on the shelf. And I may not have cracked that book for 10 years, but it makes me feel like I still have that information available to me.
I've got all my old law books, and I'll never look at them again. It's just something about throwing away a book.
But if you're in today, my wife was just saying, when we went on a trip before, she had to do all this planning and what the roadmaps were and all this thing. Between GPS and instant access to information on the web, you don't need to carry 400-page pamphlets with maps on them. You have them at your fingertips. I don't know the right answer. I guess from and if I keep on harping on the same thing, that's fine. I'll probably keep on harping on it. I don't want to end up saying, let's have each room have 50 square feet of extra storage space. And then we add up 15,000 classrooms and we come up with 4 billion, where someone was saying last time, if you use the space above the gym and said it may not be the greatest access, but if you use that as a storeroom for everybody, they just had to get up there and get egress to it, probably people wouldn't use it because they had to move, stuff is going to fill a space. And that's what I want to avoid. I want to avoid going through this, just adding up, saying, each of these specific things needs to be addressed and end up with something, unless Ingrid comes back and says, as you said, we squish all that together and we eliminate 30% of the space. So if this is just needs, I'm fine. If this is square footage, then I get a little concerned, you know, as Skip said, when he added it up, you need 23,000 for the first page.
So this presumes we have a perfect compliance with our purging policy, the storage need.
It would still be necessary.
Okay, and so, sorry, Chris, this is like going to the dentist. You probably, you probably wish you were at the dentist right now. But I'm just looking at this down the road, needing to explain it to people.
Yeah.
So that's, sorry for the, being so tedious here, but, you know, so how do you come up with a number, say, for tech storage of 400 square feet? How do we know that that's enough, and
Right.
what do we, I know, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we went with, you know, half a classroom size of the minimum, which was 800 at the high school level, based on the amount of equipment that we're having and the purpose. So that's how we derived at that number. There's no minimum standard for storage.
Right.
At any, you're just looking at the types of materials you have and the use of that room and
Okay.
what it would look like.
Have you thought about making that maybe an 800 square foot room with tech and book storage, which then could become a potential flex room?
We didn't, and again, that's where I would use the expertise of an architect to build something like that. All of this is give it to the architect and you draw it up and you tell us how we can change these numbers to make it fit what we want to have program-wise. This is program, that's what it is for us. And what we would do for this next step, Mike, to explain it, because you're right, if I'm a layman and I look at this and read it, there's
Right.
10,000 questions. There's a document that goes with this that would explain this. That's not something that Sean, Ann, or I, you know, could have developed for this. That's a monthly process to get that all
Sure.
laid out, because it will talk about, here's the purpose of why you need this amount of space and how that number came derived.
Okay. All right. Down to general, anybody else have any questions on the middle school? Going to the high school, I guess.
So we'd start on page 2, or where would you like to start, Mike?
We
Okay.
right here. High school, yeah.
I don't think there's any really changes. Most of the class spaces change. The only classes that change is mathematics classes. We have 3 current math classes. Our schedule that we have are maximized, where we're using other content area classrooms right now, so, you know, those classrooms are never open or never free.
And I note that Dr. Joyce had 5 math classrooms needed,
Right.
yeah.
And is this based on the current school population?
It's based on your schedule and the population, so it's how we teach math.
Right, but I'm saying in general, as you put the ed specs together, is this based on what we, right, wrong, or different, what the middle school average and projections have been in the Joyce report?
Correct.
Or, okay, so we're talking in that total 500 or whatever, that, the numbers that we came out that said there's about, I guess, 1,000, give or take, over the series of years, that's what this is based on. Super.
All of the rest of your classroom spaces stay consistent with 1 added physical science classroom. We do not have a dedicated spot right now for physics. Again, that's shared, and that's a different type of science, so there's an added, 2 added math classrooms and 1 added high school classroom at the high school level with prep rooms.
The social studies room?
Social studies is up 1.
Yeah. I'm looking
Yeah,
at,
I'm sorry, yep, one social studies classrooms, we only have 3 right now.
I think he's looking down here, Russ, he's got 1 physical science.
So that's 1 social
1 and
studies
2.
per grade, so a 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
We do, and that's,
yeah.
yep,
right,
And so
but
right now, they're sharing at some point.
we
there.
do.
if I'm looking at math and social studies, we're going from 6 rooms to 9 rooms. That's what this is saying,
Correct. And
plus 3 rooms.
the high school, and then 1 science that we're adding on to. You know, from 3 science classrooms to 4.
Okay.
Where's this, the science we did at the middle school, right?
You need science at the middle school and also at the high school.
Right, I'm saying, and so the life science classroom,
Life science is fine, that stays consistent. The physical science lab, right now, over on the left column, it says 1515. We have one of those spaces, we actually need two at 1,200.
What's the prep room used for?
Chemistry, that's where you do all of your prepping for your chemicals. Again, at the science level, there's a lot of prepping for your classes since it's so hands-on.
And, again, not to get into what's obvious, but is that something you see at other schools? What's the utility of it? Is it a safety issue? Is it is it a storage issue?
It's both,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's something we don't have right now.
No, typically, your teacher will mix all the chemicals that they're gonna use for a lab behind there and then bring them out in smaller increments
Yep.
for student use if they're putting a lab together.
All right.
And again, we put common locker areas at different, you could put them at different wings if you could. Right now, they're in our hallways, which shrinks the space of the hallway, so.
Chris, can you just talk a little bit about, I mean, they just renoed my building, and there was no common student space prior to their reno, and now there are like all sorts of different types. I mean, there's like kind of built-in benches and, you know, reading spaces, and then there's kind of built-in, I want to call them pod spaces where you can put your laptop and stuff like that. And it seems to me, like, just from observing in all the new classrooms that have gone up, that they have these things. So there's got to be some kind of, is there research about this? I mean, it seems very nice, but
Yeah.
it seems to me that there's also some other educational purposes.
The reading nooks that they call them, there is
Yeah.
a lot of research that you put them near as much natural light as you possibly can so that it, stimulates reading and brain movement. That's why those rooms have been created, so there is some reach on there. The nook rooms for computer use, there's not really much out there other than technology is used so often. But you will see those dedicated rooms that are near open light, that are benches inside, window panes for kids to read.
I don't know if it's the same thing you're talking about now, but a lot of the schools we went to see
All that.
had pods. They had the lockers, and then they had the classrooms right there for the team. And it almost was like a, sort of like a cafe type of feel. There were little nooks and places where you could plug in a laptop or something.
Built into those locker areas at the end of the hall for those different teams. We saw it in every single school.
You would.
Is
And
that
it's-
kind of what this is?
A lot of times, those, or in particularly at the middle school level, a lot of times that is a chance for, if you're gonna have a group of kids in, like group of 50 kids, you have a common area where you can meet, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Place where people can, if they need one-on-one help, you can pull them out of the classroom and work in those areas, but still have access to the classroom when you need to get back real quick, so.
Typically, we saw that more in the new construction, didn't we, or less in the renovation?
I remember seeing it at Keene, and, did they have it at Lebanon? Can't remember. They had it there.
so if I'm looking at life science lab and physical science lab, besides the fact that we need 1,200 square feet for a lab, we're needing a prep storage area that is an additional 33% on the space requirement for the life science lab. And then we need an additional 400 square feet, but since we have two labs, it's two separate. We're adding 800 feet, about 20% to the space just for storage. That's not included within the 1,200. And that's just
For the
strikes me
physical
as-
science labs?
Well, we're adding tech storage and book storage above. When I get down to life science lab, we say we have one lab, we need one lab, but we need an extra 400 square foot. I mean, that's 20 by 20, that's
So
strikes
you
me.
went from the middle school to the high school.
Correct.
When you're talking about tech storage and book storage, that's in the
Right,
middle.
I know that was in the middle. I'm talking just if you look at the life science lab,
Yep.
we don't have, but it's recommended that we have a
400.
400 square foot room for prep storage.
Right.
You then go to the physical science lab, of which we have two, we need an additional
We
room
would-
of
we would-
400 feet,
Correct. Just one room.
saying, gee, we'll share that 400 feet for the physical science lab, but we need a separate storage room. So Now you have two 20 by 20 rooms that are required. So I guess my question, and you're answering it, is the 1,200 square feet or the 900 square feet, whatever the standards are for the state, say this is just for human bodies, no
Right.
storage whatsoever?
Correct.
So every room that we deal with, or every group of teachers that we deal with, or every 2 or 3 rooms, this seems to have the I remember the old recommendations had storage 80% of the time. You went through and you just saw storage. So that's additive, and I guess my question would be, why wouldn't we plan classroom sizes to include storage if that's adding 20% to the size of the building? We just seem to be adding additional space requirements because that's not included in the standard. Okay. Thank you.
If I keep going on, after the locker space, we added a publishing room. We do not have that currently, so we'd be able to do our own publishing. You know, Chris Williams, who does a lot of our work right now, he does work with our kids, but we have no place to do a dedicated publishing or camera type of room. So that would be for, directly for our yearbook and to develop the student newspaper that we do. We do a counterclockwise class right now that runs out of the art room. So that's a recommendation.
Okay, yeah, and just, if I, sorry to interrupt, but just, Russ, last point got me thinking about, you know, and it's another question, I think, for Amy Clark from the DOE when she comes in here, because, you know, Chris described that the standards are in part about student safety. You wouldn't so much worry about that in a storage room, so I don't know if the DOE, you know, regulations address storage. You know, they may be the minimum size for a classroom, but not be realistic in terms of what you need for storage, and maybe she can address that too.
Yeah, I know when they do the standards, they give a dedicated amount for teaching space.
Yep.
I believe it's 150 square feet of dedicated teacher space. And then the rest is student space with desks and, you know, minimal storage in your classroom. That's how it comes about. It does not have a,
It doesn't contemplate the
Nope.
storage you might need.
Nope.
Okay.
We suggested a multi-purpose room, and that came out of both Ingrid's and Ingrid's report for multiple classes to come together. Again, that's a recommendation that's come out before.
Chris, when you say multiple classes come together,
Yep. So right now, you could have your health class go use that as a multi-purpose room, or you could take your social studies and English class and do a humanities class out of this multi-purpose classroom. We have no dedicated space to do that currently in our building.
So this would be like if you had someone to come in and talk about drug awareness or something like
Good
that.
for a small group.
For a small
Yep.
group, yep.
Might it also be like a hedge against the bubble?
Yeah, that's a big space if you're gonna do it. If you would do a hedge against the bubble, you could do it 800 or 900, 1,000 if you wanna get up and do some movement in that classroom. If we move into fine arts, you can see everything on the left. And then our recommendations on the right. So 2D, 3D classroom, again, that's a 1,200 square foot minimum space. We're currently at 1,000. Dedicated kiln room,
We currently have one, and this would go to 2.
correct. Because the one we have right now is Perkins. We don't have anything dedicated for middle school. We do that out of our technology education classroom, so that doubles.
So would it be one room for the middle and then one for the high school?
Correct.
Okay.
Kiln room would just be in the high school for their classes, pottery reel. And you have your dedicated room of 200 square feet just to do pottery, as right now it's in a classroom, so when clay is splattering, it's splattering out through your whole classroom. Photo lab. That got taken out because that goes into your photographic arts. That's a different classroom for high school students. So you have your one classroom of fine arts for, you know, painting, clay, that type of class, one at the middle school, and then your photographic arts CAD class becomes your, more of your 3D type of classroom. And then
What are we
the office
doing
space.
now? Sorry, Chris, what
It's
are
all
we
in
doing
one.
now for those spaces?
It's all in one space.
It's all in one?
So in Perkins, you have a dark room, And then everything else is just in a small 770 square foot classroom space. Then you have two separate spaces in the Perkins building, one for the kiln and one for photography.
So everything under fine arts is in Perkins?
At the high school level it is, yes.
Okay.
So Chris, going back to the Perkins,
Yep.
can you just, so what's it used for right now?
Perkins is used for high school art, and that does that does counterclockwise, which we had up there with that publishing. It does ceramics, which is your pottery wheel.
Yeah.
And your kiln. It does photography, and it does all of your physical art, so painting, drawing.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, so it's about 1,000 square feet,
Correct,
and you need two spaces at 1,200 square feet apiece.
correct. One at the high school, one at the middle school, because we don't have anything right
So what
now.
happens to the Perkins building?
We didn't put anything in there for that.
So it's just, we have a bunch of money invested in it, and,
That's a decision to be
Yeah.
made, I guess,
but
ultimately.
what I'm trying to get back to is, 1,000 square feet we have,
Mhm.
and we need 2,400 square feet. And so so we got this 1,000 square feet that's just, it seems to disappear. I mean,
But
and-
you know, what'd
That
be
was the-
interesting with the Perkins building, just kind of thinking off the cuff, is depending on what you're gonna do with that land over there, if you're gonna put in like an athletic field or something on that lines, you could convert that over to visiting bathrooms for the public when they're there, visiting locker rooms, the concession stand, that sort of thing, so.
but also,
That's
if
just
you
kinda
want,
throwing
yeah,
it
you
out
also
there.
could keep that as an art room, right?
Well, you may do it. It
Could.
wasn't the
You
first
could.
choice, having kids cross the street.
Right.
What's the building condition like? I had some complaints from my daughter about, she said she snagged her foot on a nail the other day or something like that.
Going over to that building?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But it hadn't even occurred to me to think about whether, what the facility looks like, because it wasn't, it was never built for an education
No,
purposes. to have
so
bunch of-
it's a big open space like this with two, with a bathroom, a storage area for custodial supplies, a small photo lab, and a small kiln room, and then downstairs has now been finished off so that we can store things in it, because it wasn't even up to code to be able to store things in that building when we took it
So
over.
is it up to code?
It's all up to code.
ADA bathroom.
ADA bathroom, yep.
But we're looking at fine arts, and if I'm looking at all the combinations of things, including the labs and the graphic arts, we're going from 1,150 feet today to 3,800 feet is required for the future.
Correct.
Okay. That's 3.5 times the current size we have about.
In terms of the office workroom storage, that 300 square feet, is that shared by middle school and high school?
Well, right now, we don't have that, but if you built it, you could build two classrooms off the back of each other, put that storage in the middle, and they could share it.
Okay.
And again, Russ, it's not 3.5 times, because this would be for the high school and the middle school, and another space is already being used for the middle school, so whatever that is, 800 or 900 square feet, whatever size the space is. that
Well, I'm
the-
confused then.
The middle school, the schoolers are going in.
Over here, it says fine arts on the left.
Mhm.
And that adds up to 1,150 square feet. This gets back to the skip thing before when he says you add up the sides. I add up the right side of this, right across from it, and it comes up to 3,800 square feet. So if it took 3,800 square feet and I divided it by 1,100, I'm getting close to 3.5 times the size we need for the fine arts. There's nothing that says, gee, look on page 2 and eliminate these 3 classrooms over here. We're going up from 1,100 feet to 3,800 feet. I'm not saying it isn't right, but that's a large,
I guess what I'm saying is that, and maybe it can be clarified on this, is that the middle school is using another space aside from the existing space down here, right?
Correct.
Right.
What is that space?
That's the technology ed classroom. So if you turn to the next page, it's a 705 square feet that we use for art at the middle school right now.
So, yeah, so that's what you would, that's the delta.
well, okay, so I see fine arts, the 1,150 to 3,800, and you're saying somewhere on the next page.
If you go to applied arts, We go down 1, 2, 3.
800,
Got applied
30,
arts,
100.
okay.
So that tech ed classroom,
705?
705, is now doubles as our middle school art room as well.
It says I have one room of 705, and I need one room of 800, so that
You-
says you add 95 square feet.
Right. But again, when,
Just as a tech ed classroom.
That
Correct.
doesn't,
Yeah.
right, but I'm just saying, if I'm looking at this, I got 1,100 to 3,800, and over here, where you're saying we're gonna utilize this room.
You're just using the raw
We're adding
numbers.
space to that room, we're not taking it away from the 3,800 that we had on the other page, so.
But in that 3,800 is what we would recommend to run a full art program. That
Understand.
1,700 square feet might be found in other renovation space that we already have existing in the building. So we might not add anything to art space. You might add to a science space because you're gonna use 1,700 square feet already currently used in your building that is being repurposed.
That's Ingrid's art.
And Ingrid will do that.
Figure that out.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how to process this
Right.
myself. Okay, everybody else may be perfectly fine, but I get back to, this all seems to be additive. There's nowhere here that says share, and I granted Ingrid's the one who has to take all these requirements. So maybe I just stop and just say, let's go through all the requirements, let me stop trying to figure out why this is going up and where it's shared with other space. Let Ingrid worry about that.
And I guess one thing I keep hearing you say is requirements, these are recommendations. This right column, if you were building new, correct?
Or if you renovate, they would tell you to go up to code if you renovated. You know, if you had a class space of about 810, they would recommend that you'd go to 900.
And in theory, it's had the wish list taken out. And this is just the bare bones, is what Chris is saying, is that the three of you guys have gotten together and taken off
Oh.
a whole bunch of the things
Yep.
that were requested.
That's a little confusing to me because we didn't show anything in the middle school for that item.
Correct.
Why didn't we?
I just built it in right here. I could add that and change that. It's just how I functionally put it in.
Mhm.
So no other explanation than that.
Are there others in that same category?
That are shared?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest one. Let me go through. Again, no. Obviously, if you look in an auditorium, that's all new suggested stuff.
So it's just for a matter of just a, you know, keeping it clear, just, hey, we could put that in there and just with one of the notes could be also used as also tech ed room or something like that.
I believe that's really the only space that occurred.
All right, well, if we come across another one.
Yeah, it'll come
let's
out as
keep-
we go
let's keep-
along.
Let's keep charging along. We're down to music.
So music space recommended, again, as our music program grows, but the recommendation is 2,400 square feet. We do have a choral program, and that should be different than your band program because of the functionality of it. So that's 1,000 square feet. There is no office for either one of them.
I wasn't, so I got out of music early on in my high school career. So why different room for music, for chorale and choral,
Sure.
choral, I should say, and band?
Well, band, just because of the
Don't wanna
equipment
hear
that
'em.
comes in. You know,
Matter.
they're both, they would
Sit
be
down.
soundproof to some degree, Mike. But your chorus typically is standing on risers.
Okay.
And then having seat work where your band is typically sitting in performance chairs with easels in front of them, and some kid bringing in a tuba, you know, that takes up pretty much a whole classroom, so.
So we have both of those programs now.
Correct.
And what's a typical day like for that? Is the tuba guy come by and hit the person trying to sing? I mean, what, how does
We
it
have to
function?
we have to split the middle school class because they cannot perform both at the same time. in that area. So
Okay.
it's one area they share of 1,700 square feet.
I gotcha.
But it's a dedicated class for high school and chorus. High school, that they go at different times.
Okay.
So you take care of that with scheduling? You
Right
ma-
now, yep.
You make up that 1,000 square feet by doing effective scheduling?
Yeah, but we put in a proposal to make that, it's a half-time course position to a full-time course position, which then would add an elective, which would add more demands on that 1,700 square foot classroom.
Okay, so to utilize this 1,000 square feet, we're gonna have to increase the teacher position by 50%.
We'd already looked to increase it before that 1,000 square foot happened.
Okay. Well, it all works into it, and, you know, there's a lot of dollars and cents there. So that comes with an increased teacher position.
God, I can smell Russ's carbonara jelly. I had a stuffed nose before I came here.
Cleared right out now, isn't it?
Anybody who'd like the baking or the jelly down there is free to have.
I think it's taking the paint off the table here.
As I move on,
You'd like me to close that jar up like that would?
we get to music practice space right now. When our band teacher is practicing with students, she practices in the cafeteria in small groups,
Okay.
so there is no practice area.
Okay. We saw that, I think. Where did we see that? We saw that again at Keene. Little performance room.
We do the next page, the auditorium, obviously that would all be new with an increase to the accurate size stage.
Chris, how do you come up with, we had a discussion before, but how do you come up with the 500 seat?
Again, if we were gonna do a dedicated spot for the whole school, that's your maximum that you'd look at. 500 students would be able to fit there for a whole school performance. Right now, to do that, we do that in the gymnasium.
Now, when you say the whole school,
So that's the student population,
I'm saying middle,
middle and high school, yeah.
Ingrid,
What's-
Ingrid,
just to-
go ahead.
I've been in a lot of high school auditoriums lately, I'm trying to get a sense. So what's Exeter's? Has anybody been in that? That's very large, right?
Yeah.
That's like,
I think that's close to 800.
850, I think.
I think so.
and then Portsmouth?
Portsmouth has a small one, conference room, which is 200, I believe, right, for that small one?
Little theaters too.
Yeah.
And then they have a really large one.
Auditorium.
over 750.
What's the middle school in Stratham?
That's like, that's
the
right around,
Nice auditorium.
That is
around
very nice.
500 or so,
It's a nice size.
yeah.
Yeah,
Does
it
the
is.
DOE address this at all? No?
Nope.
And so it's a choice.
It is a choice.
Do you want your whole school to
They
have-
they give you the number by how many seats you want to put in there for square footage.
Yeah.
Let's say you dropped it down to 400,
Yep.
300, your square footage goes down.
So, tell us, just, how, if you build it for the whole school, how many times would you use it for that purpose during a typical year? I mean, what would you use it for?
Sure.
Assemblies and,
Assemblies, but you would also, that would be used for production, so drama production, at any cost. If a grade level team is going down there as a whole group, 900, 90 kids right now would go down there, they could have a team production if they wanted to. Again, if you had it built, you're gonna use it a lot more. We don't have it built,
Mhm.
so I can't tell you how often I'd use it.
right,
At Stevens, when we were there, they said they didn't have one open date for the next year.
I was gonna say too, and a lot of the programs that we do besides the kindergarten concert this evening.
Which was
But,
lovely,
like,
I have to say.
this coming week, I have a band and choral program on Monday night. We pack it so tight because the program's grown so much, which is great, but we can't hold it in the elementary school anymore. Between the kids and the equipment, and then you put all the parents in there. If you had something like that, that's evening productions that we would be up using that space as well. So I don't solely just see it as a high school.
Well, and there's an issue too, because, in terms of performance space, so just for Monday night, we hope to attend, but my mother-in-law is 86 years old, and I don't know if she can sit in a bleacher.
Right.
Like, I mean, she can sit down in a bleacher maybe 15, 20 minutes, but I don't think she'll be, right? So we're kind of bumping up space versus just a chair, you know, having basic chairs for,
So here's kind of like where I'm getting at, and this, since this may be in the area of choice, where you could go smaller, you could go bigger, or whatever, wouldn't it seem to make sense that we assess what the potential likely uses are of it? I mean, if you're gonna use it only 4 times a year for 500 people, does it make sense to build at that level? Or if you have, you know, a use of 50 days per year for 300 people, you know, does it make sense to build it to that? You know, so, and we don't need to answer this here tonight, but maybe just give it some more thought, you know, what's the realistic use of a space like that? And, yeah, it'd be great to have that whole school in there, but realistically, I remember where I went, we had an auditorium that accommodated the whole school, and I recall going in there rarely as a full student body, maybe for a graduation or something. I think we did that in a gym on one rainy day, but that's what I'm getting at, Chris, because, you know, when and there's no right answer to it. It's just in you know.
well, maybe we could do some research, and I actually know the vice principal at CMS. And maybe we could we could call a couple places and ask them, you know, so what are you using it for? How frequently are you using for? You know, do you feel that the 800 is too large? You know, is 500 adequate? Is 500 too large? I mean, we could do a little bit of
There may be, you
survey
know,
of the area.
Not to be the contrarian, but I thought there was also, gee, you don't want to have the 6th graders with the 12th graders very often. So granted, you're building a space that would fit the entire school in it, but unless you're planning on 5 by 8 hour uses every day of that space, it seems like it's a huge space that would be fairly infrequently used. Maybe a nice community space. It may be the 2 or 3 times a year you'd like to get everybody in the elementary school in one room to celebrate, which is great.
I also know that they can be sources of revenue, and just, I am in high school auditoriums almost every weekend, and I'm paying quite a bit to be there, just because I have a daughter who does Irish step dance, and the competitions are usually at area high schools, and they utilize the gym for the younger students, and then the auditorium for the open champs. And, I mean, we are almost every weekend somewhere between Connecticut and Maine, we're somewhere. And I know that, for example, when we hosted it ourselves, we made up in the 5 figures.
you know, I think it was Hanover that we went to, that they had booked up every weekend. You know, and that was a commercial use. And that's sort of a.
It's a different town.
That's a different town, and, you know, that's sort of not, something you could sort of build on. I don't think here, is it sort of speculate as to we might rent this thing out every year. I mean, it's possible you'd have to study that. But, and Chris, thanks for bearing with us again.
Yeah.
This is tough stuff, but, you know, another thing that Ingrid mentioned last time about an auditorium is you can structure them in different ways. Like she mentioned that, I think, with Chris Solomon's 350-foot concept, you could put 50 students on the flat part, in front on occasion. So that may be something that works its way into here, but.
Yeah, not to beat this to death, Chris,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know the amount of seats we need. I have no idea. It'd be great to have 750.
No.
But at some time, we're going to have to sit down. I don't want to bring us by will. We have our wants, we have our needs, we have our ed specs, and we have what we can afford.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fine balancing act, but I don't know where to go with this. I mean, could you get away with 400? Could you get away with 350? Could you have 350, but you need 500, but have production instead of 1 night, 2 nights? You know, at some point, and nothing's sacred here, but at some point, we really have to say, what can we afford? And, you know, I'm sure you've done your homework, and I'll tell you one thing, a lot of these schools that I did my research on, they said that they always wish they had better. But a lot of these communities, I mean, it's just not one community going to the school, it's multi-communities going to the school. And you can, I mean, auditoriums aren't cheap. They're not cheap at all. You know.
So I agree with you, and
Yeah.
that might be a decision that we don't even do an auditorium. But our mission
Oh, I
again.
don't, I know, but I'm just saying that we're talking about, this whole, it's 1,100 square feet. You know,
And
it's-
we were given the charge to build what we would put in a school that would last for 50 years.
Yeah.
And that would meet the programming needs that we need.
Well, then is that not a rational thing these days, to be able to say, have a school that will last 50 years, because you don't know what a school needs is gonna be in 50 years. I mean, granted, any construction, I would hope would last 25 to 50 years if it's done by a righteous company and supervised properly. I really, and I'm a firm believer in needing to bring people together in an isolationist technology that has people be able to be educated primarily at homes. We're not going to have any social interactions, so there has to be some of that. But I can't believe the brick and mortar space, okay, is going to be in much in the future. This seems to be, and I'm not against the needs of each individual group of teachers who have a specialty or the special ed or this or that. But I've run businesses before, and every little pocket wants their things. And when you put it together, you go and shoot yourself in the head as what the total cost is, because everybody's had, even if this isn't the wish list, okay? It sort of strikes me as, but even assuming you carve 50% out, this seems like an enormous increase of space so far in a lot of the specialty areas. And to Dan's point or whatever, where we come out of this is hopefully with a credible thing that includes both the high school and the elementary school. And I sort of thought we were there up to today in listening to the things and Ingrid and the different ways to use space. And this seems to be getting back into more layers of expansion than I had expected. Maybe it's my own.
Well, wait a
Russ, I
second,
think one of
wait
the
a second
things-
though, but I mean, to the starving person, an orange is an enormous increase in their meal. And so, I mean, you got to talk about where you're starting from, and a lot of these things the school has done without for years. So so characterizing things as an enormous increase doesn't, well, if you start out with not having anything, I guess it's an enormous increase.
Yeah, I
So
was
I don't know,
gonna
is
say,
that-
we're starting out in some places, we're starting out as a deficit, right? So, I mean,
Absolutely.
the increase is just to get to the standard, so there's growing pain there because it's been so long that we've adjusted.
But Dan's point's a good one. I don't know if 500's enough, too much, too little, I don't know. We don't need to focus on this for the rest of the night, but
And do
it's
you
just,
have
it's just
access to
something.
information about your school, and they have an auditorium and their use?
Not have an auditorium. The town of Kittery has a rec center, which is a converted old school building, that has an auditorium in it, but we don't use it, and it's a constant problem. So we,
Maybe part of this is that you build an auditorium that is able to expand if you find the use, the way you'll situate it in your building scheme is that if you need, say you only built it with 300 seats, and you find after so many years, you're exceeding that capacity, use is there, then you could build out or add more seats or something on that.
I do think we need to.
I'm sure that's been
I do
done
think
before.
We need to keep the concept of ease in mind too. What the administration thinks, a school would need, I mean, there is some area for discussion, so. I think where this is gonna really be valuable is when you identify these scenarios, when we have public input, The public get behind a 500-seat auditorium, or would they get behind a 250-seat auditorium?
Well, I can say for myself that I'm kind of a proponent of an auditorium, and have been for a long time. And I wouldn't mind taking on the task of looking at what's available in the surrounding seacoast area for schools with auditoriums, and understand what their space is and who they can accommodate and how often they accommodate it. I mean, it's something that will take a period of time to do, maybe even 2 or 3 months. But I think that's important information to have, because I think it's a very important component of education and of a school property.
Right, and I didn't want to put put Chris on the spot tonight, but, I mean, maybe we can also give some more thought as time goes on here to, like, what would we actually, you know, if we had this space, what could we actually use it for, how frequently? And then, you know, what if we had this space, if we had 500, we might use it 3 or 4 times, if that, maybe, I don't know. So, that, I mean, I think that kind of analysis would be good. You know, where's our sweet spot in terms of use? Sorry.
I'm happy to help with that too, because,
Okay?
I also just think
like I
that
said,
it's.
I'm out and about there quite frequently.
I just think it's something that's important to look into, and if anything that's important and worthwhile requires effort, so
Right.
even if it takes a while to get the information, I think it's very important to have the information. So.
I think it's also hard to look at this in these, with these sort of raw numbers here. You know, this is what we're saying would be best for kids in Newmarket, or what the administration feels would be best for kids in Newmarket. But what we don't have yet is our architects' sort of spin on how you can combine some of these areas, or you know, creative building and creative use of spaces, which.
And location within the building.
Location within the
for
buildings,
expansion
which,
and that type of
you know,
thing.
you can add, by adding, you know, 100 square feet onto this place that can be used for this and this, and then the sum total is knocking off 800 square feet. I don't know, I'm obviously making up numbers here, but I think that there's no way to sort of show that here. This is,
Well, we had spoken about some of that before you
Yeah.
came
Well,
in.
for me, that's, the only number you can use is the number that you used. You have to show the whole school population, because at the moment, we don't have this kind of space. So if we don't have it, and we possibly desire it, we might as well have a seat for everybody in the school, every
Right.
student in the school, and then some, and start from there, and see where that goes. You know, this is a process.
Chris, could we get some information on, you know, so I know Monday night, and then there's talent shows, and there's, like, could we get some information on the use of the gymnasium as kind of a performance space that we have now? And the elementary school has play productions, and there was a concert tonight, and there are several events that are like that. So
Right.
maybe if we could just kind of get a cumulative list of what already we have that we do that would be put into that particular space, that would give us a sense of what we're doing now, and then maybe we can talk to area schools about, you know, what their schedule looks like, and, you know, whether or not they're bringing in external, you know, whether they're serving communities, or it's just, you know, and so if there's a 90% of the time that room sits open and nothing's happening, that would be a good thing to know.
Sure.
So I think we, if nothing else, have identified a hot point here.
Place for further research.
Yeah.
It's
No, you know,
10,010
no, let me set
square
the,
feet.
you know what, I would love to have a 500-foot auditorium. But as I look at this, it's not gonna, our whole options aren't gonna be cheap. And I think right along, we should realize that, and at some point, we have to make a decision, not now, but it's gonna be expensive. And to say, you know, I'd love everything, but you know what, I can't afford everything. So I think we really have to be realistic. It'd be great to have this, it'd be great to have that, great to have all the whistles, but at the end of the day, and when we're done here, some things have to go. You know, so I think I'm sure you're all keeping that in mind, but you know what, I would love to have a 500-seat auditorium. I did rough figures, I'm not gonna say what I thought they'd cost, but at some point,
And I think Ingrid, you know, this was our first meeting.
Yeah.
And she talked about this,
Yep.
that, you know, we're gonna have lists of things that you're gonna have to make choices on. You can't have everything, and you're gonna have to cross out things, and that's where the community input is so critical, I think.
Well, it is, but if Ingrid, if Chris has said that this is consistent with what Ingrid has already been working with and come up with some general plans for us, okay, then that's fine. Then there isn't that major difference, that all these individual requirements, when added up, Ingrid's found a way to make it into a smaller total square foot than adding it up, okay?
Right.
I'm not there yet, because I haven't heard Ingrid do it, and this, in theory, you know, us going through this and asking questions is great, but the next step seems to be, if we think this is a reasonable document, give it to Ingrid, and she comes back and says, oh, I had this plan already, that was Plan B that I had over here, or, gee, this looks like it's growing requirements, I have to rethink this, et cetera.
That's right. Yeah.
And then we have the land space, and, I mean, certainly we've talked about priorities of security and egress to the elementary school, and a gymnasium seems to be a far bigger issue than all these individual requests here. Where that mix comes out, and as Dan said, what's affordable, don't know. I mean, the best information we can do is to find out all the information we're finding out, but it just scares me a little bit when we have a document that just, skips that. I add up the space and it's 23,000 additional square feet on the first page, and I haven't got to the second page yet.
18,000.
Well, and they were a flexible place, so.
And that seems to be 30% more than the total space increase requirement was when we spoke to Ingrid, so I don't know how to process that.
We're gonna give ourselves an ice cream headache trying to match up what Ingrid's gonna do, so maybe we just keep forging along here.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Then,
I'll take time for one little comment.
Yep.
I think it's important through the whole process that the information we give to Ingrid and her team, give it to her and her team in a sense that she has some sense whether or not we think it's important or not. Because there's a lot of ways to get an auditorium, and maybe it's 300 seats. And if you place it in the building properly, you could expand it later on. So I just think she has to know that. She has to get some kind of a feel from us as to what's important and what's not.
Well, and there are options. I was thinking of Stroud's Elementary School that has its stage, so its cafeteria is kind of positioned here, and then the stage here in the band room is behind it. So there is a stage, and you can use the band room for kind of a green room, if you will, and for prep and stuff. And so it's not an auditorium, but it does have a place where you could put on performances, and it does have a proper stage with a curtain. But, it's not ideal, but it would be better than.
Well, we saw those in the schools that we went through.
We should get.
Yep, we need to move.
Yep.
We're in the applied arts. Just, not, biggest changes in there, just the square footage. Again, on the recommendation sizes from DOE. Big one being your culinary arts lab, where kids do cooking right now. It's 835 square feet, recommended 1,200. And then storage for our technology education classes, there's no storage right now. Everything that we store out in the red shed out behind, which also doubles as our custodial storage as well. And then computer technology, not much change. We actually got rid of a room.
And you, I think Chris made a comment last time that if you had to do all over again, you wouldn't have a dedicated computer lab.
No, it would not.
Is that what this is reflecting?
Yep.
You're taking that away?
Yep. So this could become a teaching area, and again, we'd reflect that to Ingrid, the 900 square foot class that we have, right, or 950, we would keep that and repurpose that, so that's added space in our building. Then gymnasium, you can see that there's added team rooms for when teams come to visit. Everything else is pretty much similar.
It says bleachers for 450 adults. Is that existing or?
Yep.
Okay.
The one room that you do see that's a change is a 900 square foot classroom for wellness. We do not have a wellness. He travels on a cart right now. He goes from classroom to classroom, so it would be a dedicated spot for him to teach health and wellness.
When you say teacher goes from classroom to classroom, how does that work? I mean,
So think of the librarian with all of her books,
Yeah.
pushing through the library, putting them back on a shelf. That's
Okay.
how he gets from class to class with all of his materials.
is there like a dedicated class where they go to classroom they go to for this purpose, or is it?
It will be whatever classroom we find open throughout the schedule.
Okay.
So if it's a middle school class he's teaching, we try to put it in the middle school wing.
Okay.
High school up in a high school classroom.
Chris, is wellness what we call the old health?
Correct.
Oh, got
Yeah,
it.
it's,
All
wellness
right.
style. Yeah.
myself.
We had a lot too.
Again, everything else is pretty consistent with what we have, except for those team rooms when teams come to visit us for games. Library Media Center, same size. And then some extra workspaces too that are significant in there is a VHS computer lab. Those are students who take virtual high school online. They take it right now in our library. We'd have a dedicated room where they take that. And also a distance learning classroom. And this is, you know, as you're looking to build for the future, this is a classroom space that you build for the future.
If we're saying the computer room is outdated in concept, where everybody was traveling to where the technology was and using that technology, and now the technology is in your pocket, so we don't need a dedicated room with machines that never move and kids to go in there and use it. With the virtual high school, and I recognize they're not taking the same courses, and am I conceiving it right that this is back into a computer room where?
It's a space where they'd go and do their class, so it's a dedicated space for virtual high school.
Right, but if there were 30 courses that people were taking and
Correct.
they were all different and electives and stuff like that, is this one room that has 30 stations where each of the people are seeing a different class simultaneously, and does that have to be soundproof between each of the people? I'm trying to measure that to a
Sure.
computer room when you say dedicated space, so
This is
how
a
would that-
400 square foot space where you'd have desks and they could bring their laptop and their headphones and plug in and be able to do their class. But since it's a scheduled class during the day, they need a spot to go to be supervised by adults. So this would be a dedicated spot where we'd have someone that would be able to assist them, whatever subject that they're doing. Because that class is all online.
So someone could be taking an advanced physics or AP, and someone could be taking
Greek.
Latin and Greek and
Correct.
Chinese and, yep.
And currently, most of our classes, we have about 4 kids per period that are taking virtual high school classes.
Okay, so, and thank you for the description, I forgot the headphone issue, you don't need to soundproof the rooms anymore. But this is a space for 10 to 20 people, it seems, right?
Yeah, we don't have any more than 10 kids that take a virtual high school class or a VLAC class at any time, so it'd be no more than 10 kids.
Okay,
That
and
may
that would be.
It could.
That would in theory be 5 to 6 of the periods, or out of 8 or 7. It would
Be about
a
10 a
fairly-
period.
10 periods.
Yep, 4 periods a day, about 10 kids. We have about 40 kids right now at the high school level that are taking a virtual high school class,
Okay.
or VLAX class.
And I expect that will expand over time as
It
more
could.
and more course offerings. I mean, as we're sitting here saying, let's do music, and let's do band, and let's do chorus, and let's do science, and we seem to be adding those specialty pieces, which is great for the diversity of education, but each one of those seems to may need their special space to be able to. Okay, thank you.
Teacher's workroom, again, we have one space at 255 square feet. Look to add that to 600 to encompass the close to 100 employees that are in the building at a time. For specific department head offices, department heads have their own dedicated space where they would do their work, and they do, you know, the budgeting, working with teachers in a dedicated spot. And then again, that storage issue comes up again. We get into the administration. These are numbers that are consistent with Ingrid and suggestions that she makes. So all the office spaces and general waiting spaces. And again, it's all what we have pretty much now, except just increased space size. You see the assistant principal, secretary, conference room. If we had to change it right now, we'd want that to be in upstairs or in a middle school portion rather than a general office, so that you split your administrative staff and have them in more dedicated spaces. greater supervision. Right now, we're in one centrally located office.
Would you have like a principal downstairs, assistant upstairs?
Yep.
Yeah. And, it's like, so you have additional space here for secretary, reception and conference room? What, how does it work now?
So you walk into our main office, 3 secretaries sitting in there with 1 conference space.
Mhm.
We have 1 conference space for the entire building.
Okay.
So all of our just regular meetings during the day, but not to mention, special education meetings, which are usually about 4 a day. We have one conference area to run those meetings.
So you have more meetings than you have space?
Yeah, we'll do meetings in classrooms.
Chris, can you talk just a second about communication and security between, like, I don't know what a 21st century class, high school looks like in terms of security and communications between rooms? Like, are we talking intercom systems, or is that, I mean, that seems like a very antiquated.
Well, we have an intercom system, which, from 1997 right now. The current computer I have in there doesn't understand 2015, so I have to go back to, 1970 to program my computer for our bell system and for the intercom. But most of your intercom systems are now just off a telephone. So it's your VOP classroom, pick it up and go right into the class. You can program it to bring into certain classes you want. It's all run through your telephone systems, which we have the capability to do if we change the wiring in our current building.
And are there security enhancements that you would be thinking about?
Obviously the main entrance of the building is not something that I would propose, because you can walk into the whole school, and that's at both of our buildings. So there's a buzz-in system, a waiting area before you actually come into you come into the main office before you had access to any other part of the building. So that's a redesign that I know Ingrid has talked about before. But again, your cameras. And then there's always different upgrades that you can have. At Exeter High School, they actually take a swipe of your license, and it goes barcoded so that they can track you when you're in the building, which is a extra advanced security measure.
About lockdown and capacities in classrooms and such?
Yeah, so lockdowns, we're pretty much there with the toggle locks going into the classrooms and then to practicing it. Not much more you'd upgrade there.
Thank you.
Chris, the antiquated computer system you're talking about, how do we get to that point?
How did we get to that point?
Right.
Budgets, not ever going to the budget, or that got cut out of a budget. So, that discussion, is this something we need or something we want? Well, what we have is working right now, and that was the first thing to get cut out
Yeah.
numerous times in a budget.
So my question is, as we move into the future, I mean, will there be budgeted money for upgrades, PM?
Well, I can tell you this is the first year we've been part as a school as of a capital improvement plan to look at that for a long duration of time. So I think that's a step in the right direction, actually giving us a plan and saying, hey, this is what we're looking at for the future, so.
It's going to be represented tomorrow night at the CIP, which I'm part of as well. But we've asked for years, until the issue came up about using impact fees or something like that was required, the capital plan, that didn't exist. So I think last year was the first attempt at it, and it's getting a little better.
Right.
But trying to measure and Mike, I don't know if you're aware of it, or the people here should see it. They've made some progress in putting together a number of these things in a capital plan over a 10-year period of time. And I hope that what we're doing here in the Facilities Committee is coordinated with what we're doing on the capital side, since they're pretty well merged together, maybe not perfectly. So that may be something that everybody here should take a look at, over the Christmas vacation, since I think it's just been submitted, and look at what the capital side, which includes security system and some of the things.
To Dan's question, I think it was last year, the year before, the legislature, or actually the DOE added a requirement for any new construction progress, you have to submit a preventive PM program, because they don't want to, under the old system of funding, they don't want to hand out money and have people not keep their buildings up,
Well, we don't have either today, so, you know, we're sort of on our own on both
Well,
of those.
you know, required or not, it's just, it makes sense, and actually,
Yeah, There hasn't been a capital plan in
The
the
school.
school that I could remember, other than build a new school for the past 9 years.
the school,
Boiler hasn't been replaced, you know, the fire and life safety has finally been addressed over the last 2 years.
Mhm.
But no, there hasn't been an ongoing capital plan.
All right.
Moving into guidance again, it becomes a kind of a guidance wing, which brings into some of these different areas. So we don't really, right now, we don't have a dedicated records room, and you're required by law to keep records for up to 7 years on all of your students and employees. We do not have a space, so again, that goes out into, custodial storage, so, repurposing what the dedicated purpose is for. In here, we would build a career center when you're looking for kids, and actually, students have GEDs or adults to come in and work through a career center.
Chris, does that have to be paper storage, or can it be scanned? and
It can be
read
scanned.
and
Right now, we're at the
things
paper storage. Again, we've got proposals to look at that as an electronic way, but right now, that's how we do it.
like that? And that potentially could reduce space
It could,
needs.
yep. And a transition coordinator, dedicated space, that person works in the community as well in the classroom, helping students find jobs or do internships. It helps those students that have some transition needs at the age of 18. They're not going to go to college, but might receive special ed services, how they can be productive once they leave our school system.
So where would that take place now?
It's a small classroom that's, it's right next to the network room upstairs in the computer lab. So it's a small space. And then again, the rest are pretty, pretty similar. You'll see the multi-sensory room, that's an increase to 1,220 square feet, because that's the addition of OT and PT in that as well. So I took, some of Ingrid's recommendations. She had a dedicated room of 1,000 square feet for OT, PT, and I combined that into the multi-sensory room that we have currently, because that's where a lot of the services are. Those students in that multi-sensory room would need OT, PT, so that would happen all in one area. I don't think there's really anything else that's significant other than sizing increments.
You have the student records in the conference room.
That's at the special ed, because they don't have that currently.
They don't have anything.
No.
So where would those things take place then?
Classrooms.
Okay. What's the issue with that, if you will? What is there-
Confidentiality.
I see.
Walking by, you can see anybody in a classroom in the windows. If the meeting goes longer than the time that you have allotted for that open classroom space, you're getting up and moving.
I see. So I guess we're down to reading specialist?
Yep. Reading specialist, an additional space, it's shared. It was on the middle school portion, one dedicated spot for a reading specialist at the high school. Our life skills classroom would be increased, as it right now, it has a small kitchen in it, but we'd increase it with a washer and dryer, and these are students that have significant needs, that need those life skills as part of their educational program. Speech and language, again, it's a very, very small area, 130 square feet that she currently works out of now.
And how do you come up with 550? Is that,
Again, that was taken from both Ingrid, but again, it was a number based on the number of students she was going to see. It didn't need a full classroom, but
Okay.
space for storage and the equipment that she uses to do some of the testing with them quietly. Then the kitchen was an area that needed to be addressed. It goes from 525 square feet to 1,200.
what are the issues there, Chris?
You can't cook, that's an outdated kitchen. That is definitely addressed in the Joyce report.
Yep.
Storage in the kitchen as well.
That's a popular word.
In our building, it is, yeah.
We've heard it a lot tonight.
Nurse's office.
So she has one big office space of 285 square feet. We broke it down for more dedicated, 140 for her office area when they come in, but again, that storage ward for her, dedicated examination room, an isolation area. Again, if kids are sick, you don't want them sitting in your general population if the kid comes down for a cut. And then a toilet and shower area.
Okay.
Get into custodial. An added recycling area, maintenance, shipping and receiving. Again, general storage for all of custodial supplies in the building.
So the existing boiler room, I don't know what the square footage is, but there's a different number here for a recommendation. How did you get to that number?
How did we get to that number? It was, I
Is
don't
that
know
the
exactly.
area, is that the area below the stage? Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what your note
Yep.
says, is that just use that area?
I don't know, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
I'll check my notes.
What's the, unless anybody else has questions on that section. Yeah, we have more storage there, so, and then down to maintenance, under maintenance, you have maintenance building, but there's a whole bunch of things here.
Yep.
What's the thought with all these items?
With the maintenance area?
Well, student toilets, staff
Yep.
toilets.
Again, those are recommendations that you'll see in the report, and I didn't give a square footage to them, because I would think that they'd be repurposed for different spaces in there. But it's mentioned in the report, as well as Banwell, recommendations of all these different areas, maybe being standalone rooms or repurposed rooms in our current building.
So the blank space recommends,
I didn't give recommendations on any of those.
okay, but that's because you didn't have a field to put the numbers down?
Yeah, because, I mean, how many toilets you're gonna put in and where's it gonna go and how it'd be repurposed, that's where I'd leave it up to an architect to give us a recommendation on that.
Okay, so, but it could be additional space.
Could be.
Especially with plumbing and all that kind of stuff, or it may not be. So we shouldn't be looking at the blanks on both sides as
Say there's nothing there, no,
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
there's something there, we just don't know what it is.
Correct. Your network telecom room, that's your technology area right now.
What's the workroom?
It's where they'd work on computers.
Okay.
Right now, they do it, couples in their office, so there's two of them.
Mhm.
So you might have someone working on a computer while someone's taking a conference call.
I got you.
And then I misspoke a little bit earlier when I talked about that production room. That was specifically for our in-house newspaper design. You look here, and we put in a cable production studio for Chris Williams to do work in our building and broadcast different events throughout our building.
So, Chris, you don't have the cable, you don't have the production studio now, correct?
We do not.
So do you have the equipment to fill it?
Yes, that came from Channel 13, and he brings that up all the time whenever he's doing his student events. And again, the last thing that we looked at is just a small school store, as you do high school and you do economics and different classes, you could run a school store out of your building.
There's nothing now.
Nothing currently that we do. And that's it for the junior, senior high school.
Can you go on the practice field there,
Mm-hmm.
synthetic turf?
Yep.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so if you would a proposal, one of the proposals that we'd throw out there would be a synthetic turf. That could be a multi-purpose field, football, soccer, lacrosse at any time.
Why synthetic?
For the ability to get out on the field sooner, the durability of those fields with a number of, again, that's going to get into what Elena said. I do have my athletic director looking at the number of teams that are on those athletic fields right now, and the usage of the athletic fields. It's extraordinary. That field would hold up better than our fields do now currently.
And we report it.
Again, we've got space now, so I don't think that's what would come out of this ed spec reports, but you'd look and make a suggestion and
Well, I'm
Be
just-
able
no, I'm
to use
just-
the medical services more.
I'm just saying, we have a school. If you propose a new school,
Mhm.
and then you look for an athletic field, you have to buy that land back, put the athletic field there. Because of the.
if you say if you're using it across the street right
Right.
now.
Yeah, and the only thing, if you look at these, I just did some research, I'm not gonna say in the ballpark, but you're talking about $750,000 for a synthetic field.
Mhm.
I mean, is that a need, a want? I mean, how do you justify that? And I
I
know
would-
you can go,
yeah.
I went to the reports, and they'll tell you you do your maintenance, you do the number of times, and they break it down to what's it cost you per hour. That may be great in the long run, but you know what? $750,000, that's a lot of money. Maybe you need, it was a little surprising to see that was, a recommendation.
Sure.
I mean, regular field, but synthetic. This isn't getting cheap now.
Is there a cost comparative between a natural field and
Oh,
a?
we could propose that for you. Again, we can get whatever you want.
It doesn't, you can do the cost comparison. I'll tell you right now that they said it's $25, they break it down to hours, $25 per hour for regular grass field. And, no, $25 for a synthetic and $90 per grass. That's maintenance and everything, but you have to look at how they do that maintenance. But still, to save that money in dollars, you have to spend $750,000. And is that an investment that we want to go through?
That's a decision this committee's going to have to make.
We should, it seems to me that one would want to break that out in terms of maintenance over time. I don't know what the life cycle of a synthetic field, and if you have a field and it's grass, you're right, the maintenance is gonna cost something, and that's not something we maintain right now. Right, so, it seems like
Again,
it's a
this is
pretty easy number to come up with.
Yeah, but when-
choice, it's a
No, but
choice.
that would support the
Yeah.
increase of the medical area,
Right, but.
trust me.
I'm just saying, when you go to look at these reports, be careful who they come from. Because the people that sell the turf are going to give you their numbers,
Yeah.
What
And I guess it's in the works, Chris, is what I wanted to get my arms around is the actual use and needs for the fields compared to what we've got.
Yep.
Scheduling and what the issues are there. Make sure we can, we understand what the needs are and can make the case,
Certainly may be a time for priorities and stuff, but just as it stands, with all the data that's here, and Sean, I appreciated the fact that at least some of the columns you tried adding up, but not everything.
Right.
Okay. I'm hoping it would be reasonably simple by category, that as we refine this, we can get some totals. There's like probably 30 or 40 different categories that we have on 3-4 pages. Well, I don't think everybody needs to go home and manually do it, but I think adding up what exists today in space, what the total additional space, what the increase is, what the percentage is increased by function, just would allow us, instead of seeing 78, needs in 30 different categories, at least be able to get some sense that guidance space seems to be going up, 300%. This seems to be going up 40, just to give us some ratio. I recognize Ingrid is going to figure out how to put all this in for the least things possible, but still from a financial basis and from a comparison basis, adding up the numbers, showing a percentage difference or a total difference or both, Just makes me more comfortable in being able to size where the larger issues for space and things like that are. So we can do that in the future on the pass.
So any other questions for Chris on this draft? No? No?
So thank you guys for taking the time to go through this. Looks like it was quite a bit of heavy lifting to do all this level of detail.
In a short amount of time, yeah. Why don't we go on to the elementary school? That seems like we might go a little quicker there.
There. So you can see the top section there is the current classrooms and rooms that we're proposing. The differences that you're going to see is, like, for instance, my preschool right now, I have one room that's 885 square feet. State requirements require 1,000 square feet. I have about 27 to 40 kids, depending on the time of year in the year. So we would propose an extra room to make those classes smaller. Plus, the equipment that they use for a lot of the preschool kids is just so much bigger. No storage currently for preschool. They hold everything in their classroom. So we're asking for storage. Kindergarten classrooms, you can see I have two at that 1,150, one at 1,140, and I have one right now in an 860 square foot area, proposing just 4 rooms at 1,050. They all have their own individual toilet as well. General classrooms with toilets, that is pretty much that is my first and second grade wing. So if you walk into the building, you go to the right. All those classrooms, currently about 855 square feet. State requires 900 square feet.
Was that built to an old standard?
I believe it was. When the standards have changed over the years. The building was opened in 87?
So that's another question, I guess, Dan, and I think you brought it up in context of maybe of these rooms, is that it seems crazy if they're working, that you'd have to.
Right, and I don't know, you get a
waiver
waiver
for
from the
those.
DOE and just,
I mean, I thought that's what Ingrid said on 2 or 3 different occasions.
Yeah.
These 800 square footers that, gonna get a waiver for those.
Yeah.
right.
She said at
Definitely.
some point, wasn't there also, there's a specific
I think it's a percentage of how much you're renovating the building, a certain percentage, and if you go over that, then you have to meet all the new state standards. So,
But she seemed to have no concerns
Structural
about staying
renovations.
with under,
It's a percentage of structural renovations.
Right.
She pointed that out.
yeah.
Yeah.
but she didn't seem to be concerned about getting close to that line in either at
No.
either facility.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
Down in, if you went down to the 3rd through 4th grade hallway, I'll call it, I have 11 classrooms. They don't have their own toilets because the kids are older. They use gang bathrooms at the end of the hallway. The one thing you'll see opposite that is the proposed 15, because I have 4 classrooms right now, 1 4th grade and 3 5th grade classrooms currently sitting out in portables. Ideally, if we were going to do renovations, the portables may no longer be there. So that's bringing those classrooms into the building itself. We talked a little bit about security. Portables and security don't really go hand in hand all that well, in my opinion.
Sorry, I wrote some notes when I was going through this,
Sure.
and one of them was, what is the report of 2 kindergarten classrooms at 1150?
I believe,
And then the Joyce report recommends 3 at 1260.
I didn't catch that. I'll check that.
I just don't know, these seem like odd numbers, I just don't know where they're coming up, where they come from.
I forget what the square footage per student is they recommend
Okay.
off the top of my head. Speech and language, currently we have one room. Speech and language is a service that seems to be growing over the years. We proposed, they have one room right now of 140 square feet, looking to add some more speech and language space there. You would see a total of 4 rooms, some at some different sizes. My current speech and language room is out in the portable. Some of the services also take place in other spaces that we currently have in there, like it may occur in the library at times, or it may occur in any quiet space that we can find in the building. My Title I is in a space in what I would consider the kind of a reading suite area. It occupies about 448 square feet. We're looking to increase that, basically double that into more small breakout rooms, smaller rooms. Title I services, typically, they're working with groups of 4 to 6 individuals, nothing bigger than that.
Is that, again, a program that didn't exist when this school was designed back in '86, or?
I think Title I did, but Title I has changed over the years, the requirement. It's a federally based program, so they kind of set up the parameters, and we need to follow those parameters for it.
Are there more kids participating in it than maybe 20, 30 years ago?
I would say yes, there is.
Why is that?
I just think the way they identify kids now in needing those services has changed. The bar has perhaps lowered a little bit. I can't give a complete solid answer for that, but the numbers seem to have gone up since I've been in the business. Where did I go here? Oh, resource room. My resource special ed areas, those rooms are for the population we have and the number of people working with them between service providers, case managers, and paraprofessionals are pretty undersized at this point in time. Current room 315, you're looking at making that to 700 square feet. Resource room 294, we thought we could try to break those into smaller office and instructional areas for case managers as well. You can see down into my psychologist's office. She's sitting in what I would say is a pretty big closet space, just increasing that up to 100 square feet. My special ed coordinator's office, she's out in the portable. So if I need to go get her, it's either call her on the phone or walk down to the portable to find her. So it's a small increase in space, but again, that's pulling it into the building out of the portable. You can see other spaces there. We don't have any place to, like Chris was saying earlier, special ed, you actually have to hold onto the records until the child reaches 21. That's federal law. A lot of it's still paper. It would be great to go electronic, but we don't have any SPED dedicated places to store it. We have it in the special ed area. We have some in the main office, and we have some up in the mezzanine, depending on.
I think Elena asked this earlier. Does it make sense to consider converting to electronic storage? I don't know too many places that are building paper storage now. I mean, is that a possibility?
I think it's always a possibility, and you're just looking at the expense of the technology. And then, I think you're seeing more and more schools, districts do that. It's going to be, you'd have to keep your old records on paper, but as you're progressing with new students coming in, it would be easier to develop that electronic storage.
Isn't this, a potential sharing between schools?
Yep. Oh, yeah, have you had an electronic data storage? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because a lot of records, well, obviously, when the kids leave 5th grade and they go up to the middle school, the files follow up there.
Well, also allows you to forget data mining, but database management and relational things and access to put pieces together that would take you 57 hours to go through the files. To find.
I mean, it seems to me, reams of paper are not only take up space, they're a bad use of space nowadays.
They are, and you know what, and I've seen some files this thick, and I've seen files this thick. It depends on the services that the child has had, so.
But do you see the space for books, you know, and textbooks, et cetera, continuing to disappear as technology?
I do somewhat, but I actually see that more towards the upper grades because a lot of research that you see for beginning readers particularly, it's much better for them to actually have a book physically in their hand.
Right, and I didn't ask,
Yep.
I'll ask you and
Yep.
Chris the same thing. The balance between special ed and regular education and all the things that that entails. In your planning, is it still in the, I know it's always tough sometimes to get a percentage, but I thought the percentage in Newmarket was somewhere in the 18 to 25% range, given.
In that range, yeah.
19%.
Okay. So, and that seems to be a little lower than the historical number.
Yep. So we go anywhere from, I think we go 18 is the lowest we've been at, 22 is the highest we've been at in Newmarket.
So that wasn't so bad.
Nope, the problem is that 19% can be 80% of your budget.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware. Including transportation and everything else.
Right, exactly. As Chris mentioned, conference rooms, we currently only have one conference room in the building that sits in the main office. It's used between special ed, meeting with parents at the, with myself or Ms. Raffo is in constant use, and we work at a schedule best we can. Again, we use available classrooms, or I'll put them in the round table around my office, and we're just very comfy cozy next to each other. So a conference room would be great to have. Timeout area, the new term, I guess, is called a Zen Den. It's
Is that what that meant?
Yeah. Just an area for a child who's just having a meltdown and needs to be able to be removed from the general population so he or she can.
That's the politically
Regather themselves.
correct
They
current
call it a Zen
verbiage.
Den. Yeah, I like the timeout room personally. And then a waiting area in the special ed area. Right now, we have almost the waiting area that kind of connects all the special ed rooms. It is, has file cabinets and a photocopier and that sort of thing. Would like to have a waiting area that would accommodate a photocopier, but also give some space for the parents to come down and sit in there instead of have to be waiting in the office the whole time. Reading program, you can see where, again, pretty much any big differences here is our reading specialist. We're looking to do some smaller spaces for our reading instructors and teachers to work at. Currently, they are sharing a lot of classrooms, and you may have a third grade group working in the same room, just separated by a partition with kids who are in a lower grade, maybe first or second grade. OT, PT, that's currently actually sits in one of my resources rooms in the special ed. It's something that is undersized for the equipment that they have to use with students with these issues. A lot of physical movement, that sort of stuff. So we're looking to increase that space. ESOL, I have one room right now. I have 3 teachers working out of one room. I have a current population of 18 kids who are ESOL, and they get most of their services, direct services, are in a pull-out fashion, although they do some in the classroom, so we're looking to increase that number of space as well. Computer lab, looking to make it just a little bigger. It's a pretty tight spot.
Does the same theory that Chris talked about apply down with you in terms of, he talked about getting rid of a computer lab and having, computer?
I see a computer lab fashion in some sort being a pretty permanent fixture, at least for the next 10 or 15 years out, because my computer teacher teaches kids in first grade, second grade, how to log into the computer, how to work with Excel, how to do things like that. So it's in his case, it's more individualized. The kids are more advanced, and that could change over the years when more kids are 4 years old and flipping around the iPads, and I'm asking them how the heck they do all that stuff. a lot of the time. So that could change, but I would see, we still would want that dedicated space for a computer lab itself. The differences in the art, in the specialized classrooms, we don't really have any storage for art right now. She stores everything in the classroom. We would look for a dedicated space for that. The kiln, the dry, anything they do with clay currently sits in the back storage room. It would be nice to have that in with the art room, so she doesn't have to go down the hall. Plus, I think it's just a better issue when we're talking fire and life safety, to get that out of an area where we have reams of paper and that sort of thing. The big thing you'll see here is a proposed science classroom of 1,150 feet. STEM education is coming in pretty big now. It's starting to come down into the elementary level. That would be a room dedicated for that, plus it could serve as a flex room in case we ever had a bubble class as well. The big jump you'll see here when you get down to the gym and cafeteria area is our current gym space. We're looking to build a larger gym. It's pretty small. Kids can't run in our gym. They have to skip. When you put 15 to 18 kids in there, particularly when they get up into the upper grades.
They have
So-
to clear off the lunch plates as well.
Yeah, exactly. Juggle the plates. So you see the gym, that goes from that 2,456 to 7,000 square feet. And what we were proposing is that you take that old gymnasium and you convert it into the new cafeteria. So you're actually not having to add another 2,400 square feet. You're just taking that current gym spot. We're looking to make the cafeteria big because I serve 6 lunches currently, starting at 10:45 in the morning and ending at 1:30 in the afternoon. So
So it's a 25-minute or so
25
lunch
minute,
period?
yeah, about that time,
It's frightening.
yeah. And it would be nice to have it bigger. We could do 2 grade levels at a time and afford them a little extra time to actually eat and breathe at the same time. These are just proposals for the kitchen area. Obviously, we're going to make a bigger caf and serve more kids. We'd have to have a slightly bigger kitchen spot. All the other numbers are pretty much the same. We're looking to kind of bump up the storage for PE. Right now, Miss Miller, who does a great job with PE, stores all her PE equipment in various locations in the building, including the mezzanine level and also in the back storage area next to the kiln, next to the reams of paper as well. She has great programs with bikes and scooters and all that, so it takes a fair amount of space.
We're keeping reams of paper near the kiln.
They're on opposite ends. And typically, the kiln is not constant, it's not something that's always on.
Yeah.
The stage area is something that right now our stage is our music classroom. We're proposing to have those set up a little differently. That would allow us perhaps to do some productions down in the class, down in our school, instead of always going up to the high school, if they're not big productions such as the band or chorus productions that we have in the winter and the spring. You can just see we're looking to increase the music office a little bit. Music storage is an issue. Again, that's a refrain I think we've heard a lot tonight. And the stage storage for any backdrops for when they do plays and skits and that sort of thing we're looking for as well. Library and Media Center, I think the biggest part, again, I'm going to hit that word, storage is an issue in there as well. You'll see that we're looking for an area for the store AV equipment, that sort of thing. The technology office as well, and the technology workroom. Right now, their office is where they have all their servers, and they have a small little work area, a phone, and a desk, so it's a pretty tight spot. It's, in my opinion, it's a glorified broom closet, basically, in what they're in.
No requirements for raised floors or anything like that.
I'm sorry, Russell?
There's no requirements for raised floors in these spaces.
No, no. Again, if you kind of just look into, we're getting down into, this is more the cafeteria. I should have taken that class, yeah, I should have taken the classroom heading area off. This is just, again, cafeteria storage, cafeteria space in general. No giant changes, I don't believe. The one thing you would see is like for our current kitchen manager's office is in the current storage area. She's built a little area and it's surrounded by cans and that sort of thing. Looking for, adjusting the size down a little bit for the toilet for the cafeteria staff. And so those are pretty straightforward. I think the biggest thing you'll see is the next one down under health services. We're proposing an area of 600 square feet, 650 square feet, and that would entail everything that you see down in these categories here. So it would include the storage, the waiting room, examination room, the toilet and the shower, and an isolation area.
About another 150 square, just under.
Right,
just
in
under,
that
yeah.
round. Yeah, right now, it's it's really undersized for the population that we have. And if we have more than one sick child, which lately, this time of year, we do, there's only one place to put one child. The other has to sit with a bucket on their lap, sort of thing. Administration office, you can see the space has gone up again. We're looking to get the assistant principal her own office. She currently is sitting in a kind of a cubicle setting. Doesn't allow for any private conversations on phones or anything with parents. The conference room would increase a little bit in size. Again, that's a conference room that would be used not only by administration, but it would also be used in times when they might have to meet with guidance counselors and that sort of thing. Looking for workroom, we currently in our office sits a photocopier, that sort of thing. We're looking to move that out. Again, that word storage in general, perhaps the storage and file storage could be put together. Looking for some sort of break area if possible. Right now, if a child comes down to me who's having difficulty controlling his or herself, they sit in my office. We don't have any area where if a child was had to be held in for a good part of the day, where they can be not in my office or Miss Raffles' cubby area. And we're also looking for a toilet area for the staff that's in the administration. Guidance. The biggest thing is, again, we're looking for a small room area. We're looking for an office space for guidance, and we're looking for storage. Again, we get into the category of storage when you look under the teacher's workroom. Teacher's room would stay the same, but we're looking for a little additional storage. We keep a lot of reams of paper and that sort of thing in the teacher's room. Thinking the bulletin board rolls and that sort of stuff. Looking for an area of book storage. We do put a lot of things on the mezzanine level. I'm in the process of working with Brian of culling out stuff. Talked about trying to purge. So we're trying to do that as well. But again, we need some area to store some books. Right now, they're sitting in cabinets in the teacher's work area.
You say mezzanine, is that the space above the gym cafeteria?
Yeah,
that has
yeah,
one
it has the
ingress
HVAC
point
system, that sort of stuff in there.
and No lights and.
Right, exactly. We're just looking for, we have one phone room. I didn't list it there. We're looking to add in an additional one so teachers can call parents during their prep time if they need be. Custodial maintenance, again, we're just looking at some increases in spacing in there. Shipping and storage is probably the big ones there.
What's the, just describe what the situation is now and how this space would better accommodate?
Right, when I was talking about how we're talking, if you look on that line, for instance, like the shipping and receiving / storage area. Right now, that's 705. That's that space right behind the gymnasium. Is pretty much where we get everything coming in. There's a loading dock that somehow, I don't know how it got built, but it doesn't serve to actually load the stuff into that area, and it isn't set up really well to get the food into the cafeteria storage as well. So,
That loading dock somewhat near where the portable classrooms were, a little
it's
adjacent?
a little further down. It's more close to the gymnasium end of the building. But it's set up so that they back, and it only has a ramp that kind of slides towards the cafeteria. It doesn't have anything that slides towards my general storage. So if Brian ordered a pallet full of floor wax or something on that lines, they have to, physically get it off the truck with the lift gate off the back trucks, instead of being able to just ship it into the storage room directly.
In the electrical, is that fire protection and boiler?
Correct.
That's currently 270, but recommended 1080.
Correct.
What's the reasoning behind that?
Again, I think it's just pretty much safety. I can look into that a little more deeply for you.
And there's this very curious other space at the end.
Oh, did something get cut off there?
Smoking?
Others,
Totals.
it's below totals.
Oh, I think you were looking right here.
12,588.
Yeah.
588.
The stuff on the back page totals up to the other?
Yeah,
You have the
I'll have to
totals on
take a look
top.
at that one. I'm sorry, I can't explain that to you.
I think it would probably be some
Well,
hallway
it should,
It's probably hallway and toilet space, that sort of thing.
that's on the
I
back.
think it comes back from the back.
If you look at the back page, you'll find that the
I
totals
think it's this total right here. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
in the new educational system, we put the totals on top of the category rather than at the bottom of the category, and then paginate to the next page.
I was playing the spreadsheet, the numbers
Yeah,
were coming
I
that
know.
way, so I ran with it.
But I think if you total up those categories, you'll come to the other total on the page before.
Sean, on the totals there,
Some of these numbers may not completely add.
I'm just saying,
Yep.
this is just what I want, I'll just say it the way I want to say it. We have existing conditions, we've got 61,000 square feet. And the recommendation is 100,000 square feet. I mean, when you saw that number, what did you think?
I thought it was pretty big.
And, I mean, is it realistic?
Well, again, I think if you're looking to build for something that you want for any future use, is it a high number? It may be a little on the high side. I don't think it's completely unrealistic, no.
Dan, let me make sure I understand. What numbers are you referring to?
It's on the last page, under,
It's before other space.
Right?
but, I've heard that.
Total
Yeah,
required.
I've heard that twice tonight,
required.
if we want to build the next 50 years, if we're talking about the high school and elementary school,
See it?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, that's frightening.
I did a different calculation, and I took the totals in bold at the top of each one of these, and I got a delta of total existing space of 49,622. Maybe that doesn't include the other space, I guess. And then a recommended, I guess, usable space is what we'll call it, 73, with a delta of like just under 24,000 square
Well, those
feet.
numbers you're calling out are very close to what's right in that block.
Right.
That
floor
total
area,
block.
Yeah, so the big difference,
So are we using the net floor area, or are we using the total required?
I think it's also what we talked about before, that when the danger of adding up these numbers, if it's an architect's job.
That's right.
To be
It's-
able to
really is.
is
make
that,
this more efficient. You talk about credibility and all, ending up having things like this with people adding up numbers without, as I remember looking at the elementary school, and it's just visual, that we needed some additional classroom space to get the portables in. We needed a gymnasium to separate from a cafeteria, and there was certainly some renovation going on, but as far as expandable space in that building, seemed like it was in two primary areas where the gymnasium was and on
Right.
one side and probably a little better entranceway, et cetera. And so from visual, it looks like there's maybe 20% more space or 30% more space, depending on how the gym is. Not a doubling type of thing, which this tends to get you into, so. I'd rather kind of go through the process of vetting this through Ingrid, okay, and saying, let's look at this versus what you've developed before. Does this change any of the basic space requirements and plans, or have you already addressed all this stuff? And now we're back down at this consolidated number, so we're not ending up saying, gee,
Right, I
this
think
is.
some of these numbers, when you start seeing those totals, when we talked about the fact that we have a room that's 855 square feet, we have 11 or 22 rooms that size, and they're saying go to 900, while, 22 rooms, when you're adding, another 45 square feet to them, all of a sudden you're adding a fair amount of square footage to it. So that comes in, do you get that waiver sort of thing?
Well, and you look, one of the things I'm intrigued with, and Skip mentioned it before, I've mentioned it a couple times. I've looked at these prior reports, and seriously, I'm overestimating, 30 to 40% of the line item space requirements say storage.
Right.
Okay. And which frightens me to begin with in this age of technology, but even putting that aside, if you then say, okay, let's go out and get a big corrugated roof and building and say, this is storage, and everybody put your jackets on in bad weather and go out there, that could cost $20,000 for a space to have everybody's storage. If you're now saying, gee, none of the rooms have storage, they're not built that way, which blows my mind. I mean, it just makes my head explode.
Yeah.
That storage now adds 20 to 30% to every single classroom we have as a separate request of a separate room. Just makes my head explode. I mean, I can't tell you anything other than that. I'm sure storage is necessary, but if you go through this and you add up the storage, it's adding, my guess is 15 to 20% of what the total capacity of the building is, because everybody needs storage and they need it located near where their room is and all that kind of stuff. And then that just doesn't seem in a modern day to be as practical. Believe me, I like the access point.
Right.
But it's, having it through computers or things like that, it seems to me to be making a fairly significant paper expense up for the future. I'm kind of concerned that they're not doing this.
Well, it seems like we could break some of this out too, because I know like dry food storage, that, electronics don't change that. There are certain things
Right.
that are, that where the scooters and the bicycles are, that the PE teacher uses. That, but there may be some places that,
Yeah, I think that when you talk storage, you can try to mesh things in a little better or something on that lines, yes.
And the only, the reason I added them up for the elementary school and not for the high school, it seems like with the elementary school, there would be less reconfiguring of rooms, than potentially up at the high school, which would be a total, as Ingrid said, a total gutting of the space and moving things around. So, but it's just sort of to get a rough, idea of the, of the existing versus
Right.
added or new.
Yep.
And but again, Ingrid can work her magic and fit things
So-
here and there.
Russ, did I hear you say that you have toured the facilities so that you had a, because I'm a
Yeah,
visual
I
learner,
have.
like, I feel like
Couple
on the
times.
paper, I kind of like to just kind of get my head around those
Sure.
things. I don't know whether or not you'd be willing to allow us for
Anytime,
a
yeah.
field trip to,
Yeah.
to kind of look at, and not just the storage situation, but I mean, I'd kind of like to get my
I
head around.
think that'd be good. I mean, it helps the vision I'm a visual person too. If you actually see what people are dealing with, then you may have, okay.
We talked about that in an earlier meeting, that if we were gonna do it, I would love for you to do it when kids are in the building.
Okay.
Because an empty building is much different than when you have 500 and 100 staff members.
I've been a few times for
Yeah.
budget committee and CIP and stuff like that, so.
Is there any way, maybe we could propose some date in January or
Yeah.
February that we could meet as a group and kind of tour the facility.
Feel free to go. I think I know where the asbestos is still located in the high school.
We'll give
But
you,
yeah,
we'll give you samples.
I would say set up a meeting, and for those people who need it, and, I have no problem going there. The reason I think I would rather have this go through Ingrid and have her vet this and see how different it is, and then get back into there, because I think there's a danger in adding up the numbers. If I had to sit back, and I'm a numbers person, and I really don't want to sit down and spend all the time I'd like to do in putting the numbers together. Between storage and specialty functions, it seems that's probably, put aside the gymnasium issue, and we haven't even talked about egress to the elementary school. But if you take out the gymnasium, the split from the cafeteria and the elementary school, it seems like I'm saying at least 60 to 70% of the space is for storage and expansion of specialty things, whether it's guidance, whether it's administration, whether it's special ed, whether it's Zen rooms, or all those little pieces of the puzzle. It's not core space for what I would grow up saying is classrooms. It seems to be, we've used all the space for classrooms, and all the other things between the storage and, the variety of additional, whether it's music, whether it's home ec, as we used to call it, or whatever, all those things seem to be the things that are doubling, tripling, quadrupling.
So what then is?
I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm
Right.
just saying that's
So-
where
Okay. So what, just to be clear, what would you rather, you'd rather see this go back to Ingrid, see what she can,
I mean, I appreciate the explanation. I don't feel I have any value other than saying it scares me. And I felt up to this point, we got a lot of good work done. This gets back into, that's the question I'm walking away with. Does this match what Ingrid has, or is it substantially different? That's what I'd like to find out.
Yeah, and what I would say, it's really interesting, living it every day, we have a different take, and I appreciate you guys running the numbers and going, oh my goodness, how do we afford this amount? This is step one in an exercise that is probably 10 steps. So we've done the first step, and it's like, oh my God, this is alarming, but if we built new, we'd have to build on those standards of what we just proposed. When you renovate, you don't have to say you're gonna change that 850-foot classroom for any means.
And I'm
And
not
that's
sa-
where step two, Ingrid goes and draws it out and says, here's the spaces that you guys need for your programming. Here's how I take it and put it into your scope with some additions here and there. And it might go from 40,000 extra square feet to 10,000, and we go, oh my God, that's great.
Well, and that's where I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I'm saying where Ingrid was taking a set of requirements that I think were there. They may have been slightly outdated, already thinking through some of that. So we were at stage 3 at stage 1.
Correct.
And now we're back in stage 1, and if Ingrid comes back and says, there's nothing new, I had all this stuff covered before, then I could say, okay, let me put my brain back into, this seems to be a manageable set of issues that we have to deal with. Getting down to this nitty-gritty and having it all added up, as you said, and not having the architect's thing there, gets scary again. And I think it's the best opportunity we have in the committee to make this a more focused and less scary thing for the people outside this room, much less inside the room, as we go through the process. So no, I'm not overreacting, I hope tonight. It's just that
No, because Russ, if we gave this to the public, there's no way we'd get a vote, with, you're right.
if you
so-
think the $45 million, if you
So
think the
it's
$45 million
Yep.
issue without including the elementary school, you're talking about $178 million at this point in time.
Chris's point is really really a good point to come away with tonight. I mean, look at the debate we had just as of people who are in tune with this issue, here tonight. It needs to be refined, and you need to, there are gonna be areas where Ingrid's gonna help out and fit in spaces on a potential renovation, but another category of decisions is, and this is the community input part, is what would people support? Would they support an auditorium of a certain size, but not another, or none at all? There's a whole bunch of those things in here. But there are some no-brainers, too, that I think we could all, right now, sort of check off and agree to, that that really, makes sense. So, so from here, the school board's gonna look at these tomorrow and, put in their, thoughts and we'll see where it goes from there. I think we'll probably wrap around with the principals again and refine this a little bit. But it's a beginning, and, if you do any reading on how these processes go with the architect, these things get tweaked around. I mean, the architect doesn't come up with this in the first instance, but they can make recommendations, like, to save space and money, and maybe even eliminate things or do things a different way, so. But we gotta get the clay to work with, then she can,
Now, what will Ingrid have from us when she comes next?
I'm sorry?
What will she bring with her? I mean, what is,
I understand next time, Dan, she's gonna bring 2 or 3 new conceptual drawings of a new building across the street at Carpenter,
all right.
and, which we haven't even looked at yet, so. And with, obviously, all the stuff down at the elementary school as well, so.
In thinking of a selling proposition, not only to the taxpayers, but also to this group, it seems to me part of the process should be, and probably from Chris and Sean more than anybody, is how would they rate the priorities of this? And if they all come out as A priorities, then we've wasted our time. Because they know best. I mean, they're in the schools every day, they see, I'm sure some of these things they desperately need, and others they think, well, it'd be nice to have that one, but we could live without it. And between them, I'm just thinking from an explanation standpoint, okay? Being able to say, here are the 8 priorities, and gee, maybe all of us agree on the A's and the B's, and we start to differ a little bit on the C's and the D's. And then does Ingrid's plan take care of the A's and B's, and does that put you in this general financial ballpark? And what do the C's and D's add to that equation? I think you're gonna end up getting there. One of the
Maybe like
things,
another column with a ranking next to it.
at some point, if all this comes in and it costs $20 million to do, or $15 million, a number that we, heard a little bit about in the Reno days, in the Ed Reno days, then I think maybe the community can say, can we handle $15 or $20 million? If you're saying, gee, it was $45 million for the high school, and now we're talking about the elementary school, and needing to acquire land and have better egress and build a gymnasium, and then, people are gonna say, gee, was the 45, whether they're right or wrong, was the $45 million way low? Gee, I'm glad that didn't pass because we never had the elementary school for another $45 million at the same. I don't know. I mean, that's where I'd like to see it come out. But from a fundamental point of view, I think having Ingrid do her thing and having maybe Chris and Sean, certainly with your help or anybody else's, say, hey, I'd say these are definitely the A's. Okay. And we're not even talking about what I think we all agree is one of the more fundamental issues, that the elementary school is constrained for space. So is the high school. But if you look at parking across the street and people who hopefully will pay attention to not getting run over, that's an easier solution than the elementary school. It's pretty isolated, has one egress point and not enough room for the kids necessarily to play and eat at the same time and have parents drop off. So I don't know if I'm assessing that right, but that's sort of the way I come out of this thing.
Okay, so just briefly, we, Skip, Mark and I walked the property directly behind the elementary school on Sunday. This is the ledge area, and there's some interest from the Durrell Association to swap essentially that. I don't know how many acres it is. I think it's roughly 4 for another wetlands piece that the school district owns, which is right adjacent to it. It's along Durrell Drive. The idea being that the association needs so much open space to comply with its original documents, and would be an equal swap. We really can't use the wetlands for anything, other than to listen to the frogs and watch the birds come in and out. That won't change in any event, but the area right behind the school is a potential use. Now, it's, I had never been up there. I mean, it's steep and it's all ledge and rock, and it would be a monumental project to blast and drill the whole thing to put anything substantial over there. But if you needed to move your access road back a little bit, you know, that may be feasible. But it's sort of like, for an equal swap, it's sort of a no-brainer, because that land is potential use, at least in part, to us, versus the land over here that has really no use for the school. We also walk the McGrath property, which is the one that runs parallel to the playground area. And chime in, but we walked the back end of it. The wetlands, I don't think are gonna be an issue there at all for what we would use it for. I mean, there's a stream way in back, but it's mostly uplands until you get right to the stream, and then it dives down in. But it seems like that, and Ingrid said this, and Dr. Joyce said it more generally, that property is something that the district ought to grab, you know, now, because it just it allows you to do many things potentially. An access road around there for a bus drop-off, parent drop-off out front, bus drop-off out back, and they could go out there, you know. It allows you potentially to expand. You mentioned the playground was a little tight. But that's, I just wanted to give a brief update there.
It's a beautiful piece of land. Doesn't just make a big, huge difference in the elementary school site,
Right.
for sure.
Well, that and an
This
extra,
is parceling, that piece of land is parceled off from the house that, on the street that.
Yeah, it
is
runs from
Is
straight
that what I
back.
meant? Just want to make sure I've got that right.
Yeah, it's got a curb cut, and it
Yeah.
runs straight back,
Yeah,
right parallel to,
and we provide another regress point.
and the new homeowner is interested in selling.
the estate of the former owner is interested in selling it. There was a P&S on the property for a while, but it fell through.
Oh, okay.
So the school board is actively looking at that. But that would have to go on a warrant article, as would the swap.
Yeah, but another 20, 30 feet of space to put a wider access road, or maybe a little extra parking in the back. Not taking down a mountain, but taking down a quarter of a mountain. You know, and using it not as buildable space, but just access space. May
In
have
terms
some
of width, how
advantages.
much, you know, in terms of the swap, is that giving us 10 feet, 20 feet? I mean,
Well, I think it was 200 feet way back. It's a ton of space, it really is, and 200 feet, and then it runs the whole length of the school, and I think, and then some, a little beyond it. But you almost need climbing equipment to get up there. It's all rock. I mean, it's just,
Huge amount of ledge.
oh my
right?
God. I mean, I never looked up there, but, you know, you see the initial 10 feet, but then you climb, you know. And it's all ledge, so you couldn't just, you know, cut the trees and put a playground up there. It would seem the use is right immediate to the existing access road, if at all, if.
Is there feasibility for a warrant article in the next coming March?
There better be, or
Is
it's
that-
gonna have to wait another year.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yep.
So that may be the
Is
priority.
that something the school board's considering?
Oh, yeah, we are. And these aren't break the bank. I mean, the swap is nothing. It's legal fees to draft everything up, which isn't much. And then, you know, the McGrath property, I think it was listed, or is listed around a little over $200,000. That's the list price. But the deal fell through for something less than that. They couldn't get bank financing because the home is so run down, and they have a wood cooking
kitchen
stove.
yeah.
There's no kitchen in there.
No
No
kitchen,
formal
it was a wood cooking stove.
Sounds like the elementary school cafeteria.
Be the high school.
And the barn there has timber value, right?
What's that?
The barn has timber value.
There's been mention of that, yeah, yeah.
Looks like a barn.
Yeah, there's an old
Oh,
slaughterhouse
you
there
can find
too.
enough labor to deal with it.
So, that's that.
So Mike, just so when we leave, I think there's a little bit of homework that we have. I don't know if it's for next meeting, but I heard numbers existing and recommendations as it was at the elementary school for the high school report. Do people still want those numbers?
Whether you share them with us or not, I think totaling up the numbers by category and doing something with, and you said there may be a couple errors here, you need to clean up some of the data, but what is versus what these numbers say, and what the difference is in the percentage, I think is useful. I think thinking about priorities, whether you want to share them with us or not, I think we're going to get to a point where, unless everything gets done for $15 or $20 million, to throw out a number where everybody breathes a sigh of relief and says that's half of what we thought before and we can get everything done, that you're going to get people saying, hey, where is the cutoff points here for us?
We can definitely do that. Then there was a list of event spaces that I think you talked about for the gym area, music and fields that we can bring. There was discussion about cost of synthetic versus grass fields and given some literature on that. I can definitely bring that. And then I think we talked about not using the Joyce report, but going back and see if there was discrepancies from the numbers that Sean and I put out in that report. And then finally, I heard that Skip and Elena were going to look at auditorium usage and size. Okay, so is there anything else that we needed to?
I'd be intrigued with the cost of medical expenses against an AstroTurf field versus a grass field to see if you're spending it in another place, but I don't think you'll find that data particularly correlated today.
Did we have anything on here for parking on either spot? I know we've discussed that before.
No, not on these sheets.
You might want to, give us, I know you gave us numbers before, and maybe I can look back at the other meetings, but preferably how many spaces?
That we use currently?
What you currently have and what you would want.
I think there was
I didn't have it on
Yeah,
my
it does.
spec
Paved
sheet. I didn't have it
spaces
on my spec sheet, but I could check that.
Well, of course, it struck me that, and maybe this is a stupid, but it looked like
Oh, on
part
the-
of the solution with Ingrid every
on
time
the
was
junior,
moving
senior high
parking
school.
across the street.
There.
Parking on the
If
back,
you do a lot
last
of
page.
that, you seem to be able to.
175 paved spaces,
Expand the school.
100 gravel.
Yeah.
Where there isn't the easy space to get like there may be at the elementary school.
Is it,
The elementary school seems like it's, an island.
It is.
Um, And unless you do landfill.
Chris, actually, you do have it. It says 200 paved spaces. Is that existing or needed?
That would be needed.
Need 200 total?
Yeah, so I think there's existing 175 right now.
Okay.
But I'll give you
Okay.
the accurate numbers.
All right.
Parking. I can check parking.
And then Sean, also you mentioned the playground is sort of somewhat limited. I think the kids who don't like equipment.
Right, there's.
Maybe you could just draft something up there.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be lengthy, but
Yep, I can get something together.
Yeah,
for
Is
you.
there DOE requirements for playground size? Because that one seems just,
I can check. I'm not
There-
familiar if there is or not with DOE.
it's late.
What I'd love, but I don't think you guys can do it, is, town has a recreation department, that's where most of the fields are today, that's what's utilized. We really don't have the space next to the schools at the moment, and even if you acquire the land, I don't think you have the space to put ball fields or anything like that. It would be nice to have the town and the school work with the plan on ball fields, whether it's recreation or whether it's school usage, whether it's on the Carpenter property, or you figure out a way to, the rec fields are used today primarily, aren't they? Yep. Okay. So you have it used off-season by everybody else and on-season by the schools or during the day and then later on during the day. I don't know if that fits the elementary school. It's farther from it, but I wish somebody would sort of look at that problem of the whole space and how best to utilize it before we end up saying, let's fill landfill and build another ball field somewhere.
It's a good point. Along that line, maybe we could get together with Jim Hilton for an hour or half an hour or whatever it takes and just talk through, because there may be some win-wins there, and maybe he's got resources that he might have available, I don't know, like grants or whatever that, I don't know, but
I'd say Jim and Steve, because I think
Yeah.
Jim told me he was He's saying he's retiring in another year or two or
The
something.
rumor, yeah.
That's sort of what I heard, so I mean, you probably will. But I just wish that, whether it's security, whether it's land usage of ball fields in the rec department, people are actually working together at some levels to get this done, but we don't seem to be working together in the school board, town council. Let's get together and solve the problem collectively.
All right, that's it. So next meeting is January 6th. That'll, Ingrid at 7 o'clock.
All right, Chris, Sean, Ann, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Yes, thanks very much.